Hey, coaches, how you doing? This is Coach Adam and Coach Kyle here with another draft analysis. This is Kyle. This is how many have we done so far? Maybe
Is it
six, seven?
draft analysis?
Yeah,
Oh gosh, probably at least seven. Well, our first draft was season. Our first like big draft was what, season five? I feel like five or
yeah, that
six was
seemed
when we started.
right. Well, and you have to remember, so new coaches, this is season 13. If you look on our website, it says season four because this isn't actually our website. This is someone else's website, and we were just using Google Docs before this. Um, But season nine, we actually did three individual drafts. It was kind of like a mega season.
Right.
So we did three drafts. So this is the 17th season or 17th like individual draft, I think.
17th draft. Yeah,
Yeah. So, and we've maybe done
that's
analyses for
crazy.
seven of those. So we're, uh, I don't want to say we're professionals at this by now. We're amateurs now, though. We're
You'd think
certainly
we'd be better
amateurs.
at playing the game after this much of
Oh, oh my gosh. You're
after
so
this much
right.
drafting.
Uh, you know, but the thing about Pokemon is that the number of things to learn continues to increase, and so you
Right.
have to keep um, being maximally involved to continue improving. So,
Right. It's not like
um,
chess where what you learned when you were 10 still applies. Some of that still applies, but there's definitely a lot of interactions that you got to keep in the back of your mind as you're playing
yeah,
now.
I think with Gen 8, there's been some things like, at least for me, like speed tiers that I have not memorized or something. So in some ways, I'm sure my playing has gone down. But we have a whole bunch of new Pokemon back this season. Um, can
Right.
you just walk us through what happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was just we got the new DLC, and the DLC added some of like regular Pokemon, but most of what it added was a lot of the legendaries. So we got
Right.
the Tapus and the Therians and some legendary birds. So the last two seasons in Gen 8 have been, in my opinion, pretty boring. Not that I don't like low tiers, but I didn't like what ended up happening, which was a restricted format with some good Pokemon, some really good Pokemon, and then a lot of just like whatever Pokemon. So this feels like not a complete return to form, but just seeing right now on my screen, I have the tier lists and just seeing all of these like Tornadus and Zapdos and the Tapus back as things that we can draft was a pretty big breath of fresh air for me.
It's exciting. Yeah, one, like you said, there was a restricted tier list previously, and so one of the results is that even though we had fewer coaches in previous seasons, the tiers felt extremely crowded, where
Mm-hmm.
every single Pokemon in the top four tiers should be drafted, basically.
Right.
There were very few options, and so actually, even though we added more coaches, I feel like there were, I have this intuition that people were not sniped as often. Also maybe people couldn't have as much of a plan because we didn't set out the draft order very far in advance. But I had my 11th pick sniped, so
Right.
that's not so terrible.
And the Pokemon that were good, I just think that were like leagues better than the Pokemon that were almost good. The obvious example that I see is Dragapult. Dragapult was the best Pokemon that we didn't have banned. And I mean, we can have a whole debate on that at another time, but I just think it was miles better than the other Pokemon in the format. So much so that it should have possibly been banned. And but then the question becomes, should we be banning Pokemon that are fun to use, or should we allow in other Pokemon that were previously banned back into the format? And so the DLC did something good where it gave us more Pokemon that could compete with Garchomp, or not
Right. Well,
with Dragapult, like Garchomp, like Tornadus, like Celesteela. And then I think that all of the Tapus being fairy types, that sort of gave us even more permission to bring in things that were previously banned, like Darmanitan and Urshifu, We could have been
Yeah,
wrong. there's there's
no,
a there's a live possibility that that any of the Pokemon that we unbanned should have stayed banned. But I think it adds some
absolutely.
excitement to the season.
But it definitely is exciting to use fun Pokemon like the Ultra Beasts. I think a lot of people are excited to use. And I think you're right that the variety at the top of the tiers got a lot bigger with the
Hmm.
DLC. And so that allows for more people to have high level counters to Darmanitan and Melmetal and yeah, the Urshifus and things like that. So, or, counters or equivalent
Right.
level things. So, um, anyway,
Um,
do you want to talk a little bit about how you made the tier list? You and Andy and Ian sat down and made the tier list.
right. So one of the things that we were thinking about was in previous seasons, what was good is now just less good. Because there's more good Pokemon, and maybe not even that it's less good, but we didn't want a situation where there are 30 Pokemon in the top tier and 30 Pokemon in the second best tier, where you get in this situation where if you look at your team or you look at some of the other drafted teams, you maybe only have one or two Pokemon that are tier 160 and above. And so we didn't want the situation where we effectively banned Pokemon just because you couldn't with the point system draft them. So we wanted to down tune or down value a lot. And we also figured if we're going to add most of what I would consider the busted Pokemon that we included are offensively busted. Urshifu, Darmanitan, Galar. And so we wanted people to be able to pick up potentially checks to these at less value. Um, Everyone can't draft Blissey and Chansey in Draft League. And so we didn't want everyone to have to just use 120, 140 of their points just to potentially draft these counters. So there was an overall buff to bulky Pokemon because if they were borderline between two tiers, we just shoved them in the lower tier. And then, like I said, what we did is we effectively lowered the cost of most things by like looking at the former tier 160s and keeping the top half and moving the bottom half of that tier down. So Andy, Ian, and I would look at a tier and we would go, okay, what are the objectively seemingly best Pokemon in the tier? What are the worst Pokemon in this tier? Move down the worst Pokemon and then go down to the tier 140s and do the same thing. So there are some big jumps. Like I think Indeedee moved down 2 tiers. Is that right? Not Indeedee. No, what's the T? What's the T Pokemon?
Uh, Poltegeist.
Poltegeist. Poltegeist moved down 2 tiers and then didn't get drafted.
Yeah, there's some
So
other weird ones. Like I thought Azumarill was a little bit under tiered potentially, and it didn't get drafted. Um, there was, yeah,
what do you mean
Corviknight
by
moved down two
right?
tiers, but that one was
Celebi
drafted.
Celebi has previously been in tier one, like the top tiers now, or then the second best tiers, and now it's down close to the average tiers. Yeah, sort of. That's sort of. I would note that it seems like tier 140 and up are just really good Pokemon, and then tier 100 is just like mathematically should be the average Pokemon. So the 120s fit in this weird spot where they're just above average, but they're not quite great Pokemon. So I
A
think a
lot of
lot
them
of
wind up being good in draft league with a specific utility, like
right,
Arcanine or Barraskewda are
right, and
great examples of
they
that.
fit well on. I would say they fit well on most teams still. Where once you get to the tier 100s, you start getting to Pokemon that are conditionally good. That provide certain utility for your team. Maybe you need to fill in some speed gaps, or you need to like get something with higher speed, or maybe you need another defogger or another stealth rocker. Then you can still safely grab those out of the tier 100s and above. But once you start getting below that, you start to like compromise other utility. Like if you want a defogger, it's going to come at a cost. If you're going to want a stealth rocker, it's going to come at a cost.
Yeah. And so I want to talk a little bit about, especially for our new coaches, like what is the purpose of lower tiers and kind of just explain a little bit about how we're going to grade the drafts, or how we're going to evaluate them, which is that kind of the purpose of low tiers is, well, yeah, in one way, it's to enable you to get some other higher tiered Pokemon, additional high tier Pokemon, which people took advantage of this season. But also part of the point is to find Pokemon that are specifically, they have lower and lower kind of versatility, or the niche that they occupy, it becomes smaller and smaller as it goes down. And so it doesn't mean that they're bad Pokemon. It just means that the number of situations in which it's useful kind of lowers. And so one of the criteria that we use, I don't think we didn't grade based on each individual criteria this time, but just looking at, does this team, do the low tiers add a niche that a Pokemon that's a higher tier does not fit?
Right.
Um,
Do they
because if they
complement your most expensive Pokemon?
Exactly, because if they're filling the same role as the most expensive Pokemon, then um, you would never want to bring your lower tier over that higher tier.
Right.
They should ideally be able to exist together on a cohesive team. So,
Right.
um, yeah.
I think I would say that so every season I feel like I try to come in with a new approach. Either I'm analyzing the meta differently than I have before. I'm seeing sort of type combinations that I've never um, sort of thought was viable. Last season, I thought that ghost types were going to be incredible, and turns out are like winner of the regular season drafted two ghost types. And so I've I mean, and even Adam and I have talked about how quad weaknesses are a little bit more viable and actually can benefit from the amount of resistances they have when you like put two types together that have a quad weakness, like Ferrothorn. That becomes a lot more viable without moves like Hidden Power. Um,
Mhm.
so each season, I kind of have a different approach. Um, I think this season, especially because we're still in a restricted format, this isn't national decks. I think that just covering every single type is less important than I previously thought. I think I've just learned now that you should build a team that complements your most expensive Pokemon. And your most expensive Pokemon should be, I guess, directing your win conditions. Maybe they aren't the win conditions in and of themselves, but um, the teams that you build and the Pokemon that you draft should be oriented around that. So like nobody drafted Keldeo, but for example, on a Keldeo team, I don't necessarily think you need to get the fire and the water and the grass type and the dragon and the fairy and the steel core, but it's like, what does Keldeo do well? Keldeo is a really good breaker. It's fast. What does Keldeo need as support? Well, it obviously needs hazard support because it doesn't put in hazards in itself. But it also has difficulty against fairy types, against grass types. Um, and so if someone drafted Keldeo first or second round, I'm thinking now, how does it deal with fairy? How does the rest of the draft answer the questions that Keldeo poses, or how does it answer the problems that Keldeo has? I think that's more important than saying like, oh, this person didn't draft a grass type. Therefore, it doesn't check all the boxes. Therefore, it's a worse draft. But now it's like, what is the other 10 Pokemon do to complement Keldeo? And I think that's even more important than what I previously thought was, does this fit in a standard archetype? Is it a bulky offensive team, or is it a stall team? All these other terms which work for like Smogon tiers, I think are helpful here. But yeah, you'll notice in at least the way that I'm grading the teams is it's more about focusing on, if you grab a 100, or if you grab a tier 200 and a tier 160, that is like a third of your points. And how do the other two-thirds of your points help that sort of like top heavy part of your team? it's a new approach that I have. I don't know if I necessarily drafted that way. I think I drafted that way. And yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. And in some ways it's a more it's kind of based in first principles, right? Like why does fire water grass spore exist? Well, because
Hmm.
they supposedly
Yeah.
ideally cover each other's weaknesses. And so,
Right.
they complement each other. And so really the most important thing is the complementing, not
Right.
the core. The core
If
is just
Keldeo
a
has trouble with grass types, then getting a fire type would generally be good.
right, right, exactly. So, all right. I
Cool.
believe that we're planning to go in draft order, and hopefully, when we post this video, maybe one of us or somebody will comment the timestamps of each coach,
Yeah,
so you can.
I'll go in and I'll just find when we start talking about each coach. So hopefully in the YouTube playback, you'll be able to actually just hover over and skip through if you want. We're gonna do it a little bit more lax. Some other times we've had like strict times, or we've had like a strict. Oh, now we're going to talk about which defoggers there are. We're going to be a little bit more conversational. The video might be longer in the process. But I hope that everyone can get something out of this, not only about your team, but hopefully this becomes a video that you can go back to and look at if you're playing me in 3 weeks. You can go and look at what we said about my team to help give you some prep.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that that's one of my favorite things about doing these videos is that it helps me kind of pre-prep for each of the weeks. It lets
Right.
me, and it, looking at all the teams helps me situate my team a little better. Say,
Right.
oh, actually, turns out all these other teams are way better than the caliber of
Yeah.
team is just way better. Or turns out my team
Or
is good.
yeah, I have a ghost weakness, but nobody drafted Aegislash and Blacephalon and Spectrier, so it doesn't actually matter that much that I don't have a ghost weakness. So
Right.
I recommend. Andy posted a tier list setup. I want to see what your tier lists are for all the other teams. And I think one thing this does is you do like shit like this where you just like write a whole bunch of notes on what other teams are, which ends up being like a really good practice for getting your mind situated for draft league. I will say also to the new coaches and to the old coaches alike, your grade on how you drafted is not directly related to how well you will do in the season or how well we think you'll do during the season. If anything, it might influence how much, like, the lower grades are indications that you might have to do more work to make certain weaknesses or holes in your team less significant. But it does by like for both of us, we have one of the best performing coaches in the league. We don't have their team rated that well. They still that coach still might go 8-2 or 10-0. So your draft rating hopefully is an indication of things that you did well and things that you can work on, rather than an indication of it's not a power ranking by any means.
Right. And just something that what I was thinking about when I was ranking these teams is, well, one, even when you look at the teams in depth, turns out it's still hard to compare two teams and say that one is better than the other. So these
Right.
are all inherent.
Pokemon is still a game of rock, paper, scissors. And if you get Urshifu Rapid Strike but your team is rated low, if you can just click a dark move and beat the other team, it doesn't matter how well balanced their team is.
Right. Um, yeah. So,
Cool. So let's actually
yeah,
just start with
yeah, I think,
Dayton
yeah, let's go
Dunsparce,
ahead.
because
Hey,
the first overall pick was Urshifu Single Strike, a Pokemon previous or just recently. Let me just pull up the team. Just recently banned from OU. Is that true?
I did not
Is,
know that. I haven't been in OU recently.
that might actually not be true. Um, I don't remember. Yeah, you check. But anyway, it's a Pokemon. It's a Pokemon that's really defining. Smogon has defined it since its release. We decided to put it
It
in
get
this.
banned.
It did.
Yeah, it's in Ubers now.
Yeah, it's a Pokemon that is unique in Draft League. Both Urshifus in that they're you can't run Protect, and Protect is an underutilized move in Draft League. It's significant because you don't necessarily there's not like a meta where you know typically what 4 moves are run on Gengar. Gengar is going to be built to counter your team specifically, so it could be any of Gengar's moves are in, and so Protect can be a good way to just scout information on your opponent's team, and the Urshifus just break through every Protect, and their signature moves always crit.
Yeah. It's also, probably one of the reasons that it was banned from OU. I haven't been paying that much attention, but like something that might seem like a check, which is Clefable, is quad, Urshifu is quad weak to fairies. You're gonna maybe want to run Wish Protect. Turns out you can't do that against Urshifu. So,
Right.
um,
So
anyway,
this Dayton Dunsparce drafted Urshifu Single Strike round
yeah,
1, and then built this
I'm
team around it.
I'm excited. I know that Andy has not necessarily, so I knew Andy from high school. I know that he has not necessarily been as involved with Pokemon in the later generations. I'm not sure exactly how far he got, but to see Urshifu and I think even maybe Rotom and Galvantula might be after his time. So I'm excited to see that he drafted some new Pokemon,
Let me actually.
Turtonator maybe.
I'm switching my
Uh,
display. You don't need to see our faces anymore. There you go.
yeah. Something else that I noticed about this team, Kyle, can you scroll down to the matchup?
Yeah.
I meant to talk about this in the intro as well, but this is a new feature in this website. There's the type matchups, and basically this shows. So for Urshifu Single Strike, it has the 0.25, so it resists dark, it quad resists dark. The 4 means it's quad resist to fairy or quad weak to fairy. 2 is its regular weak to fighting. So then you can scroll down and it shows this at the bottom. So I want to caution everyone to not be too worried about this thing at the bottom because
You
one
mean
thing that it
like
doesn't,
the type matchup totals?
yeah, the summary. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can't see my screen with my mouse. But one thing that it doesn't explain. So, for example, we can see on Andy's. So it says fight. Look at the fighting category. So it says he's -1 in fighting. But if you look at the team, which Pokemon are weak to fighting? So he has Registeel, is uh, Lickilicky, and Dunsparce. So those are 3 Pokemon that I believe are but all 80 points and below, maybe even 60 points and below.
Mm-hmm.
And so Andy should be bringing Urshifu, Gengar, Cresselia, Rotom Wash more often than Registeel, Lickilicky, Dunsparce. And he likely will not be bringing these 3 Pokemon at the same time. So, if you think you can just look at the bottom and say, oh, weak to fighting, I'm going to throw fighting coverage on as my 4th move, I would encourage you to think more deeply than that.
Right. Or like
Um,
ground, for example. There are a lot of Pokemon that are weak to ground on his team, but Andy likely will be bringing Rotom Wash and Cresselia every week. So if your 4th move on all of your Pokemon is just because he's weak to ground, I'm going to just put a ground move on it. That's not going to be that. That's it. You're not going to set yourself up for success.
Now, something that this tool is useful for is I'd like to show, I think this core I would call Urshifu, Gengar, Rotom Wash. Now, if you look, you
And
can
Cresselia,
see,
I think.
and Cresselia, that's true.
Yeah.
They cover each other perfectly. So there's nothing, basically, if somebody's weak, like for example, Urshifu Single Strike is weak to Fairy, but Gengar resists Fairy. And
Mm-hmm.
Urshifu is weak to fighting, but Gengar is immune to fighting, and Cresselia resists fighting. Cresselia
Right.
is weak to bug, but Gengar resists it.
Gengar
So
has a ground weakness, and Cresselia is floating.
right. So if you go all the way across, Andy's team has that kind of perfect defensive or typing synergy, which is what we were talking about earlier with the like fire, water, grass is maybe
Right.
like a typing synergy. But you wouldn't necessarily think, what is this? Fighting, ghost, psychic, or dark, psychic, ghost, you know,
Right.
Rotom. Like that's not quote,
That's
like a
true.
standard
Yeah,
thing.
wherever
But
there's go on. Sorry.
just that, anyway, that's kind of the utility of this tool is to help evaluate.
Yeah,
Um,
they're out of those top 4 Pokemon. There's no instance where there's a red border and not a green border in the same column.
right, right, exactly. So, maybe then your best bet is to find something neutral against all the Pokemon like
Electric.
Dragon or
Yeah.
Electric. Yeah. So, um,
That's a good
anyway,
yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it. Um cool. Yeah, so what do you think about when you look at this team and what are you looking at?
so I think the hazards are okay. Let me see. For those of you that don't know, if you keep scrolling past the type matchup, it'll show you some stats about the team. So hazards, actually, I think the hazards are not amazing. Galvantula, Sticky Web is nice, but I think Andy would be hard pressed to bring Registeel or Dunsparce every week, especially if he's trying to bring Urshifu, Gengar, Cresselia, Rotom Wash, Galvantula, Registeel. Do you
Yeah.
really want to be locked into those two every week? So I think Defog is a little better. Rotom, it can comfortably run it most weeks. Um, and it's not ground week. And it's not ice week. So anyway, I think I see that. Um, here's what I wrote is that I want to see an offensive Cresselia and a utility Gengar.
Hmm.
Um, because I think otherwise the team, so basically those two kind of top level Pokemon, um, being not what they obviously are, which is Cresselia, maybe like Calm Mind, Moonlight, Gengar is like Choice Specs or something. I think otherwise the team might become a little bit too easy to predict. It might be just, um, yeah, it's too easy
Right.
to predict. That's kind of what I saw when I looked at this team.
That's interesting. So yeah, when I was looking at this team, I think that there's a decent defensive core in Cresselia, Rotom Wash, and Registeel. I don't think they share like any common weaknesses. Rotom Wash is only weak to grass, and then Registeel is either resistant or, and then Cresselia is neutral to that. You could go through each of the typings for those 3. So I think the defensive core is pretty all right. And so that makes that's a good plus for this team. I think that allows Urshifu to come in, click its choice band move or whatever sort of attacking move it is, and then whatever the check might be to Urshifu, Andy has a decent way to like has something to go into. Um, I I I think that Licky Licky is a tough sell for me because, like you said, Registeel's the his best hazard setter,
Mm.
and Registeel and Licky Licky share that fighting weakness. So that could be if you want to run a Wish Passer in Licky Licky, or you're either increasing your weakness to fighting, which would then be Licky Licky, Registeel, and Urshifu, or you're not running your best hazard setter. Actually, it's your only entry hazard that takes damage because Dunsparce is also weak to fighting. So so that's a little bit of I think like a problem with the team. One thing that
What
I was
about the?
also
Oh, go for it.
right. One thing that I was also thinking is that Urshifu Single Strike would benefit from Pokemon that are a lot faster than it. Because I feel like you can't check Urshifu defensively. Very few teams are going to have, like, one team is going to have Toxapex, and Toxapex is going to be that counter to Urshifu, but most teams aren't going to have that. So what I was thinking was, man, maybe the only way to actually effectively beat Urshifu Single Strike is to bring your Pokemon that are faster than it. So one of the sort of counters that Andy can do is also have Pokemon faster than Urshifu to compete at that speed tier. Right now he has Galvantula and Gengar. I think even just one more Pokemon would have been really, really helpful for this team to just increase the amount of coverage moves and ways to beat Urshifu. Gengar is actually really cool with Urshifu in that way because I think some people could easily just put a Choice Scarf on their Fairy type and say, this is my Urshifu counter. I'll bring it in, click Choice Scarf, Moonblast. And then having Gengar as something that's faster that can click its poison moves, I think is actually, like, that's some really cool synergy. Cresselia being able to, like, take a bunch of hits from fairy types and can shrug them off is really cool synergy. So there is some synergy here, but I think for me the big thing is having things faster than Urshifu would be helpful, and I think also those fairy types, like I said, are going to be a nuisance for this team potentially. Skuntank is a poison type that does not resist fairy. Turtonator is a fire type that does not resist fairy. And so you're looking at Registeel as just sort of being your designated switch into fairies. Or because Gengar's defenses can be pretty weak.
Yeah. I almost wonder if sometimes I like to think about trades that coaches could make. I wonder if Talonflame would fit on this team as a faster Pokemon, and Turtonator could be an okay fire type, but offensive fire types are often wind up being effective
Yeah.
against other teams. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the trade would be, but
I will say that there are some Pokemon, namely Braviary and Urshifu, that are going to benefit a lot from Galvantula's sticky webs. I think that Braviary having normal and flying coverage hits so many things, and it gets like superpower or gets some of those fighting moves too. Braviary becomes actually really good with sticky webs up because it ends up being a pretty good wall breaker for this team. So yeah, those are sort of my first thoughts on it. Do you have anything else?
I'm trying to think. I kind of want to. I'm trying to think of a question for every coach. I think my question for Andy is no. I don't know. I don't have one for you. Sorry.
I think the question that I would have is just, or like the prompt that I would have would be, make sure you are finding out unique ways to support Urshifu. Some weeks that might be sticky webs. Other weeks that might be some fucking weird thing like Choice Scarf Registeel. I have no idea, but yeah, just trying to find those. What is the Urshifu counter on the other team, and how am I going to deal with that? Because if you can beat the Urshifu counter, then you can literally just send that in and click its moves and win. You could just 6-0 certain teams with just Urshifu, and so finding a way to do that by complementing it with your other Pokemon, I think will be a key to your success.
Yeah, that I second that.
Good.
Cool. All right.
The next overall
up,
one is Driftveil Drapion.
Driftveil.
Welcome back,
Hey.
Mr. Quality.
Yeah.
With the Driftveil Drapion. Can I fit all these? Yeah, okay, I can fit all these Pokemon on it. Okay. Cool. Second overall pick was Celesteela, another tier 200 Pokemon.
Oh my gosh. Celesteela is one of my favorites. It's extremely fun. I'm glad that it's back. It's very hard to beat, I think. Even just like one-on-ones a lot of Pokemon.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised with it. I don't think our league has used Celesteela that well in the past. I think oftentimes it's like people put it into the position that it has on Smogon, where it's Leech Seed, maybe Air Slash. It's just like this like defensive wall. And it's one of the most versatile of the Ultra Beasts in that pretty much every stat except for its speed stat can be every stat except for its speed stat can be the thing that gets the Beast Boost. And so that puts Celesteela in an amazing position. I had it in another league, and I would be losing legitimately have no chance of winning, but my Beast Boost is set to my attack, and I just bring it in after something dies and click what is it, Rock Polish, Agility, whichever +2 speed move it does. Live whatever hit against the Pokemon is, and then just sweep it with all of the coverage moves that it gets, whether it's like a Heavy Slam or Air Slash, Giga Drain, Fire Blast, and just like end up sweeping because now I'm faster than everything, and every time I kill something, I just ensure my chance of winning is that much better. So I think people are going to be surprised if Matt chooses to bring this thing with sort of the like I would call it the draft league sensibilities rather than just the defensive sensibilities that it can otherwise perform really well with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So for the rest of Matt's team, we have a sand team, and this is the most interesting sand team that I've seen
Right.
yet in our 17 drafts. So we have both of the top two sand setters in Tyranitar and Hippowdon. We also have never allowed Landorus Incarnate in our draft league before, so it's Sand Force only. Which I
Right.
actually was worried it would be under tiered for a sand team, but that's okay. And Drakazole, which I think is incredibly good with Sand Rush. Um, and that's the sand option is two sand setters and one sand force user and one sand rush user. So I just want to talk a little bit about I'm a little bit down on weather this season. A couple of coaches drafted weather. And overall, when I rated all of the teams, I found that the teams that had weather on them, I happened to rate lower. And so I wanted to know why, or I just like was thinking about why. And I think that part of why it is that you'll notice as we go through that a lot of teams this season are looking a lot more like OU teams than they are like our previous draft. So if you look at teams like this team, for example, there's Celesteela, Tyranitar, Dracozolt, Landorus Incarnate, Hippowdon, those five.
Yeah.
Now, not all of those are in OU. Like I know Dracozolt isn't, and sometimes Tyranitar isn't, but
Some of those are in
they,
Ubers.
right, they're not, yeah, they're not totally out of place. You could see them in OU and you
Oh,
wouldn't
they're
be
all
that surprised.
viable. They're all
Yeah, they're all
viable in the
viable. A
top tier.
lot of teams this season have five Pokemon that are viable in OU, and then six Pokemon, to pick the best niche from.
Yep.
And so for the weather teams in general, my theory on weather in OU is that it's good in OU because you're not expecting it and
Right.
because you can't prep.
You
Yeah,
click play next.
right. And you'll find when you play a lot of OU, or what I found when you play a lot of OU, is that there's a band in the ranking. So, yeah, that's about like 1,300, where it's like a bunch of weather teams. But once you break above that band, then there aren't that many weather teams. And my
Hmm.
theory about that is that playing weather is good enough that you can beat a lot of teams or players who are not quite as good with it. But there's like an upper limit to how effective it is because a lot of the importance of it or a lot of the effectiveness is due to the surprise of it. And so um, now that's not always the case in draft league I have that same analysis, but this season because teams are looking a lot more like OU teams, I think that weather is less viable or it's
Hmm.
less I suspect that it will be less effective than it has been. And so in general, I rated all so I said that about this I'm going to say that about this team um, because so many points are invested in weather. But I'll also say that about other weather teams.
Right. Yeah, it just happens to be this one because they're the first weather team we're talking about. What I actually, I don't have the sort of anti-weather bias this season that my co-host has. I think, I think that in general, I think I thought more highly, actually, in all cases, I thought more highly of the weather teams, than Adam. At the end, you'll see our tier list, so we'll probably talk about those two and talk about some of the differences. But yeah, like for this one, oftentimes for weather teams, they're built around hyper offense and it's about winning before you die. But sand functions a little differently, because you don't get offensive boosts from sand. You don't get, it's not like sun or rain where you get, where you're like moves of that type have like an extra multiplier to them. But at the end of each turn, because of the chip damage, hopefully they're taking damage, and that damage is hurting you less than it's hurting them. So there's sort of a cumulative effect that sand has, where the longer the games last, the more turns there are, the better your chances of winning. And I think this team might fit into that category, just because of if you just look at how many Pokemon this team has that aren't affected by Sand Chip. There's 3 Steel types. There's so many. There's Lando and Hippo. Do Sand types or do Ground types get affected by Sand Chip damage?
No, they don't. It's ground and rock and steel, I believe.
Right.
Are all
So
immune.
and if you look at his top 5 Pokemon, that's all of them are immune to it except for the Pokemon that also gets Sand Rush as an ability. So I think that they're top 6. All of them are like that. So I think that this is going to be a unique Sand team because it's sort of defensively better suited than other weather teams. Even like Jellicent having Recover. I think that there's some cool defensive synergy in Tyranitar and Jellicent and Hippowdon and Celesteela and even Tyranitar and Celesteela. I think that that's going to work really well. There might be a lot of burden on Jellicent, and to be sort
Yeah,
of the switch into the water type attacks. Otherwise you can just spam Scald against this team, and it's either doesn't want to get burned or it's taking super effective damage. Except there's Jellicent, and then almost similarly with grass moves, against a lot of the ground stuff. Though that one's less.
yeah. Celesteela is a fine switch into grass
Right.
moves, I think.
What
Um,
I hope is that we see some offensive Tyranitar sets because Hippowdon can just be there to be the sand setter. It can run Weakness Policy and Rock Polish, or it can run Dragon Dance. I hope we see some utility, or like some variety and some offensive variety in Tyranitar and Celesteela. Otherwise, that's a lot of points for just 2 defensive Pokemon. So
yeah, I think that's
If
my
Matt can't find use in Tyranitar or can't find enough use, there's probably other 160s that he can go to, including just like Necrozma gives you a psychic type, and it gives you like different coverage, gives you special coverage, to hit some things that you can't otherwise hit. But if you can make it work with these 2 sand setters, then fucking cool.
Yeah, that's. I think I have the same question to you, Matt, which is that yeah, prove to me, prove to us that the drafting 2 sand setters makes your team better instead of worse.
All right. You don't have
I
to
don't
prove it
know.
to
It
me.
might be. It might be.
I like your team. I think the only thing is I circled Regice and Togedemaru, and I'm like, when are you ever going to bring these? they're weak. They're weak to the same thing as Pokemon that you're going to always bring. Yeah. So I think those low tiers for me are like, obviously when when you draft that much good Pokemon, you're going to have to figure out which consolation prize tier 40s and tier 20s you get. And, it's like, I'm not going to downrate you too much for those because you only have to bring those 10% of your matches. So overall though, I really do like your team. And I think that, having Hitmontop and Landorus Eye as your Your hazard removal is good because Lando I can just put back hazards if you want to run it defensively, but even just with having that rapid spin, so they can take 12% when they come in on rocks, and I don't know, even 12 more percent when they get hit. But I don't know how much Rocky Helmet does. If you ever run Rocky Helmet Hippowdon, and then 6% when Hippowdon toxics it, and then 6% more when Hail hits it, they're just gonna die, not from you clicking attacking moves, but just because you can like set up those style of win conditions.
I am really very excited to see how this team plays out. I don't know that I would be able to pilot it very well, but I have high hopes.
Great.
Um,
Beartics are next.
yeah, let's go to the Beartics. I think that I liked this draft a lot, if I'm thinking about the right one.
Oh yeah, you should be thinking about the right one because this is maybe my favorite.
Oh,
This is maybe my favorite team. I'm not going to
oh
spoil
my
anything,
gosh.
but
It's so good. Yeah, again with teams that look like OU teams. Look at this. Torrenti, Jirachi, Como-O, Volcanion, Galarian Weezing. Look at that. That's insane. And I think, yeah, some of the defensive synergy is good with um, having enough levitate and flying Pokemon to avoid your earthquakes. Maybe there's a little bit of edge break, which is a lot of Pokemon learn Earthquake and Stone Edge, and so you might there's a little bit of a weakness if you say who's weak, resists both ground and rock. Um,
right.
so there might be a little bit there.
Como and Weezing, I
Um,
think, are decent at being sort of your
that's
switch-ins to Earthquake and Stone Edge or
that's
Quagsire.
definitely yeah, that's definitely true. I think this draft really has very good low tiers.
Hmm.
That's one of my favorite things about this draft. Like I think Whirlipede is very effective. I think Swine and Quagsire um, are you might think like why would you draft two low tier ground types? But I think they do completely different things. Yeah, I think it's just good. It's good. Eldegoss has that the rapid spin. Um, yeah, I just like this draft a lot.
Yeah, I think having a variety in electric communities when you have Volcanion and Torn is pretty fun.
Mm.
And you don't need your ground type to be your rock setter when you have Jirachi and Como. Yeah, so this might be. I think I'll just say I think this is my favorite team. Just the amount of variety there is in it. For some background for the new coaches is that Nick's first time drafting ever was last season, and we rated him poorly. He might have been my worst draft. In my draft league viability or my draft analysis last season, I might have given him the worst score. And he ended up going 10-1 and winning the championship last season. So I guess proof that you can that the team that you're piloting is only part of the equation, and also just like building in win conditions and playing Pokemon ends up being also a huge part of it too. Unfortunately, one of what seems to be the best players has one of the best teams. I think that having Tornadus as well. So what I think is interesting is I think Jirachi, Como-O, Weezing, and Volcanion work really well together. So looking at just those four Pokemon, you have switch-ins to a variety of different things. You maybe have a bit of a... Looking at this team, I think that Jirachis oftentimes are run Choice Scarf, or they're run as sort of your Spadef wall. And I think it's probably going to end up being more of the Spadef tank in this team. Besides that, what are you running for your special defense? Maybe Quagsire, maybe AV Torn. But so, okay, if I'm just thinking about Jirachi as your specially defensive Pokemon, you have great switch-ins to knock off with Weezing and Como-O. You have Como-O that can set up rocks. You have Jirachi that can set up rocks. You have at least one Defogger, and Weezing, maybe Volcanion also gets Defog.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, so you have so much variety in just these four, and what I think that does is that frees Tornadus up to be whatever it can be in a specific week. It can run the nasty plot sets if it wants. It can run AV. It can be the defogger for your team. And one of the things that I love about Torn is that it can still hit really hard and be an offensive presence on your team. Never die with Regenerator, and just fourth move have defog on it. It has so much versatility, and I think with these next four Pokemon, I think that just frees Tornadus up to be everything that it can be. It's not pigeonholed. Maybe Jirachi's more pigeonholed, but who cares? That gives more room for Torn to shine. I agree with you that I also like the low tiers minus Eldegoss. I'm not an Eldegoss fan.
I like Eldegoss. I'm here for it.
Yeah,
I think
we can.
Cotton
Yeah,
Down
we can
has
have
its use. Rapid Spin is always good.
as it adds to the Regenerator core. I get it. I'm not sold on it.
That's
but
fine.
but yeah, it's like this team can run a variety of different styles. Most weeks I could see it running more in just like the bulky wish pass regen, bulky offense style, maybe balance style team where it's just going to hit hard and take a lot to kill. But with things like Whirlipede on the low end, there could be weeks where hyper offense looks really good on this team, and you're running the Omni boosting Komo sets, and you're running the Scarf Jirachi with Trick and U-Turn, and you're just running Choice Specs Volcanion. Yeah, I'm really scared of this team. Decent speed control. I think having good Pokemon that can utilize Choice Scarf, like Rotom and Jirachi, really help something like Tornadus, which is your fastest Pokemon, not have to necessarily run positive speed nature on it each week. So good on Nick. This team's fucking rocks.
I think my question/challenge to Nick is I hope you can find a way to utilize neutralizing gas and Misty Surge on this team, because I think that those are extremely good abilities, and it's part of what makes Galarian Weezing so good. But you might have difficulty not running Levitate if you're bringing Jirachi and Volcanion. So
I
maybe not.
I like that. Who the best ability on Weezing is Levitate.
You think so?
Yeah, you don't need to neutralize their gas. Who cares? Just beat it other ways. And yeah, and half the time, especially with Jirachi, you're gonna be want to run it, and especially with such a bulky team like this, you're gonna be wanting to running your own status moves, your Will-O-Wisps and your Thunder Waves and your Toxics. Yeah, just assume Weezing only has one ability, and I still think this team is the best drafted one. That's my hot take. But
That's fine.
maybe
Yeah.
Nick can bring a different ability on it, but if he doesn't,
that's my challenge. That's
sure.
Yeah.
I will comment as I switch over to the Toledo Sharpedo. Even though I'm very much for your liberal use of the word question, none of your so far every question you've had is a statement.
Yeah.
But no, I like question.
My challenge.
No, yeah, I like that's what I'm very okay with it. You keep using the word question, don't stop. But I know Andy is gonna pull what little hair he has out of his head every time you say it. So
which Andy you gotta clarify now.
Oh, that's true. I don't know if your friend Andy is as much of a prescriptivist. No, wait, what's the other term?
Prescriptivist? I don't know.
Yeah, prescriptivist as Andy Taylor is.
I'm gonna say no comment.
Deal. Maybe leave a comment if you know.
Toledo Sharpedos. This team I like a lot. Kyle, you were talking about how Dragapult you think was the best Pokemon in the format.
I think it still is.
Maybe it still is.
Maybe Urshifu Dark is. I don't really. I don't know. But I think Dragapult is still the best Pokemon. I'll just say it.
Uh, I'm here for this team, is what I'll say. So again, this is another team that if you look at the top five, these aren't impossible to find in OU. Maybe less. Maybe this is less. Maybe this is more like an actual draft
Yeah,
team.
this all of these Pokemon function in more of the draft league sense, where Steelix is not viable in OU, but
Sure.
is like a staple in draft league.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's good though. I think that um some of these, so this is a pretty defensive team if you look at it on the face of it. Corviknight, Sylveon, Incineroar can be offensive with that 115 stat, but
Mainly
Intimidate
defensive.
plus heavy duty boots.
Parting
That's the
shot.
utility.
Yeah.
Knock off. Um, yeah, so I think that this team is pretty defensive, but I think that so how I mentioned earlier that a lot of teams look like OU teams. I think that the defense on this team can actually handle some OU level offense.
Yeah.
Just like having even just like high stats. Um,
Yeah.
sometimes is what
You
it
have
takes.
switch-ins to some of the better fighting types with Sylveon, and you have switch-ins to a lot of the other types with Corviknight. Corviknight's defensive typing and stat line is amazing for draft league.
Yeah. And it's kind of fun. I know that Dragapult is not really that defensive, but it's not totally wimpy either. It's not really Gengar. And so the fact that it resists fire and resists electric is, you might see some utility there defensively as well. So I'm kind of up on this team. I think it's good. I think the low tiers are effective, in my mind at least.
Yeah, I think you're right about everything you said. Um, I think that defensive core, maybe let's call the defensive core Corviknight, Sylveon, Incineroar, maybe Steelix too. I'll call
Yeah.
Steelix part of the defensive core just because it's best stealth rocker. Is pretty great. I think they'll find a lot of use out of that. So like I said, when I was thinking about my approach to draft league this time, about looking at the best Pokemon that they have and what does it do well and where does it find problems and does the rest of the team complement its problem areas. Dragapult, I think, is incredibly versatile, so it's hard to find out. It's not as simple as like, oh, bulky grass types can wall it for days. But it's like Dragapult might have struggle with steel types, but its stab ghost moves still hit it for neutral damage. Same with fairy types. And I think some dark types, especially Pokemon with Sucker Punch, could get under its skin. But if I go through and I go, okay, well, what are its answers to steel types? It still looks like possibly Incineroar and Corviknight with its body press sets can still handle a steel type that might otherwise wall Dragapult. For me, one of the and like fairy types, you have Corviknight for fairy types, you have Sylveon for fairy types. So in general, I think that if you just look at like the typings and what the Pokemon in those typings do, I think that it complements Dragapult pretty well. Where I don't think that where I have some questions about this team is the team is largely very slow. It's base 85 speed and below, besides Starmie and Sneasel and Dragapult.
Yeah.
And so for me it's like are like that just feels a little off. For me I would want to see, I guess you have Shuckle, but the team is almost so slow that the sticky webs are going to, you would have to, like, the sticky webs aren't even as effective as if there were some base 95 Pokemon on it or some base 90 Pokemon that were really, really, really taken to the next level with those sticky webs. Something like Bisharp or Darmanitan. And that's sort of also part of it too. Is Dragapult, as great as it is, it's maybe a setup sweeper or a cleaner, but it's not like its base special attack or its base attack are so large that it can just come in and kill everything right away. So I think having like a certified wall breaker, something like regular Darmanitan, that can just click a choice band move and just like do like hard damage on the other team, would take this sort of team to the next level. Even just switching, I think, Darmanitan to Incineroar would give you that speed that I was talking about. That wall breaker, I think, would be like a really good. But without something like that, I think that the team becomes pretty passive. Roost, Wish Pass into, and then without much offense that you're supporting with that passivity besides potentially Dragapult.
Yeah, I think that the offense is possible, but I think you have to dig to find it. So, like for example, there's no Sunsetter, but Venusaur can be incredibly offensive in the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at we've seen some great Choice Scarf and Choice Band Incineroar sets recently, and I think Starmie, actually Starmie is the thing I'm most excited about on this team. I love Starmie. I've drafted it once and used it terribly. But I think this team is set up well for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as it's, kind of a very fast base 115 utility Pokemon. So I'm excited for that. But, it could bring a little bit of offense too. I think it gets Calm Mind.
Right.
So um, I
I
think
think you're
that
right. I think you're right to bring up
it's
like the
possible, but it will be required.
right, and I think it might be matchup specific. I could see this team, even though I might rate it low, I could see it performing well against maybe a weather team. We have so many of them. I think it could also perform well against some of the what do I want to call them? The terrain setting teams that are revolve around Tapu. I
In
think
your
that
team.
it kind of has like an anti meta sort of look to it as well. And maybe Venusaur, actually, I'm underplaying. It might not need Sun to do well. Maybe it can set up its own Sun, or Shuckle sets up webs, and Venusaur's coverage moves end up making Venusaur a pretty decent wall breaker. We'll see.
We'll see. We will see. Indeed.
Having knockoff support though on this team is really helpful too with Dragapult, because I'm sure a lot of people are just gonna run Choice Scarf on a bunch of shit to try to outspeed Dragapult, and they're not gonna be able to do that
Yeah.
as well without
Oh,
items.
one thing I do want to play up just a little bit is that I think that Incineroar and Dragapult and Venusaur are all going to really, maybe not Venusaur, but I think Incineroar in particular is really going to benefit from Wish support.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
anyway, maybe that's noteworthy, maybe not.
No, I think it is, and that having Incineroar be benefited by that is really helpful, because it means that it doesn't necessarily need to run heavy duty boots as a fire type, and its moves like Parting Shot become really cool too. As Incineroar lasts longer in the match, you can maybe late game Parting Shot into Dragapult. Now they are minus on their the opponent is nerfed on its offensive stats, and you can just set up in front of it. So it's almost like a one turn screens effect.
Mm.
So the longer Incineroar lasts, the better outcome this team will have.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited to see how it goes. All right,
Connor's
who do we
team is
have?
next.
Yeah,
I'm not going to attempt the Irish, but we have the Irish Berry, the fighting sheep.
one at Garchomp. That's
Yeah,
what uh, that's
every
what
tier
Connor went
one.
with.
This is so many, or tier 200s. Everyone so far has been in the tier 200s. Is that all of them? Were there 5 of them?
Yeah, I guess that no, there were six,
Okay.
but Melmetal dropped pretty far.
Yeah. So, but the first out of the top 5, all tier 200s. Garchomp being,
Good on you all. That's something that maybe wouldn't have happened
oh my
two
God.
years
Sometimes
ago.
we had
So
like fucking Tangrowth drafted first round, and I wanted to pull my hair
the
out.
Lotties are left till
Yeah, we had
round 10.
Megalotti living till the second round to be drafted with Tapu Koko for Ryan's team.
yeah, just like, yeah.
Oh, real
Anyway,
quick, before we start on Connor's team, that's one thing that I was thinking about. I'm sorry. I apologize in one sense that the way that the drafting kind of turned out, where people didn't really have time to prep, they didn't know what draft order they were in, and I'm sure that made the draft a lot more difficult for some people. If you know you're going to be late in the draft, then you shouldn't get your hopes up for something like Garchomp. I got my hopes up for Garchomp like before the draft order, and then once I saw my order, I'm like, well, I can't expect it to stay around forever. So I apologize in one sense that you weren't able to prep, but I think an effect of that was that people did what they probably should always do, which is go, what is left that's still on the board that is really good? What's the best thing that's still around? I think in previous seasons, people looked at their spot in the draft like, okay, I'm 10th in the draft, so I'm going to pick something reasonable to prepare to draft. So I'm going to draft hÉireann, or I'm going to draft Tapu Bulu. And then what they end up doing is, because they put all this work in to make sure they can draft a team around Tapu Bulu, like Megalodios is still on the board. Whatever these other really good Pokemon are still on the board, and you just pass them up. So in one sense, I think it sucks that with sort of the rollout of this draft. In the other sense, I think that we ended up drafting some really good Pokemon, especially in those first 3 rounds, that we've never seen before. I don't think we've seen that good of drafting in the first 3 rounds.
yeah, I think I would agree with that. Can you explain to everyone, and actually, um, I meant to do this when we were talking about Tornadus, but can you just explain to everyone why Garchomp is tier 200? Because
That's true. Yeah.
it wasn't one of the best Pokemon in Gen 7. So why is it? Well, it was good, but it wasn't.
Yeah, we didn't
It
really
wouldn't have been.
especially in our league, it didn't really have a purpose. Yeah, so Garchomp previously had a hindrance to ice moves. Not everything gets an ice move, but everything previously got hidden power ice. Um, so that was the reason why it kind of sucked in the past, and why it's better now is just because coverage against this offensive threat has gone down. But I think also with the restricted format and having a speed tier above base 100 affects Garchomp. And then it also got new moves,
A scale shot.
namely Scale Shot. I
Yes.
don't think that is necessarily mind like that. It's not like meta defining for Garchomp. But what that does is it allows Garchomp, and Garchomp is still the offensive threat that it was, but it allows it different ways to be offensive. Maybe in the past it required Swords Dance and 3 attacking moves to really optimize its offense. But now I think that you can win with Garchomp every week and have different sets with it every week. You can run Scale Shot and Swords Dance some weeks. Some weeks you can run Assault Vest. Some weeks you don't need to run a setup move. Sometimes you just run Scale Shot and not Swords Dance, and just your base 130 attack with your stab moves will do the trick. You could probably get away with running Weakness Policy Scale Shot. There's just so many different ways that Garchomp can do what it's supposed to do, which is win, and be that offensive thing that it hasn't necessarily had before. So maybe tier 200 isn't the tier for it. Maybe it's just the best tier 180. But I really do think that it is sort of has a very unique place in Draft League because of that.
Yeah.
I mean, Draft League is about being able to run a variety of sets and to make that particular for your opponent. So you can run the Poison Jab sets, or the Stone Edge Earthquake, or not run a Dragon move, or not run. It's just such, I think, of variety, I think, is key. And I think if Connor wants to spend 200 points on this Pokemon, then he should be thinking about, how do I fine tune this Pokemon for this specific matchup?
Absolutely. And I think he has a good team around it. And especially, correct me if I'm wrong, this is maybe our first very traditional Dragon Fairy Steel Core that we've seen,
Mm-hmm.
with Garchomp, Clefable, Cobalion. I mean, all Clefable and Cobalion they're always staples in Draft League. Um, and so I think they're all three rockers. Um, so I think this is a great start to the team is kind of what I saw immediately.
Right. Yeah.
Um, I, yeah, looking down a little bit at some of the lower tiers, um, the other thing that I noticed right away, and um, maybe there's something I'm missing, but this looks like um, uh, Connor wanted a sun option, but they're without a sun setter.
Hmm.
With drafting Solar Power Charizard and also Chlorophyll Blossom and Chlorophyll Leafeon. So anyway, that's just something that I wonder about if that was intentional.
Hmm.
And I wonder if Connor will be able to utilize, um,
Right.
I don't know, maybe that means just putting like
How many points is
sunny day
Torkoal?
heat. I
80?
looked at it. It would be a little bit difficult for this team. I
I
think
I
it's
mean, unless
80 or 100
yeah, if it's 80, then you just get rid of this normal type Cinchino.
is, it is tier 80.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
I
Connor,
might
if you wanted to
trade.
do that, that could be pretty fucking cool.
Yeah. Um, yeah, you do have obviously Regieleki has that top speed tier. Cobalion and Garchomp are pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, so I wonder is the 115 helpful? But maybe then investing four low tier picks into a Sun option is not. Um,
Yeah, it's a better way to deal with your low tiers, or
yeah,
at least you know what you're getting with them. What I liked
yeah,
about this team, I fell in love with this team with those first three picks, like you were talking about, and then I think Regieleki is really cool with it too, with the screens set up. It can, and it provided like almost a promised rapid spin at one point just because of how fast it is. Um, I like fell in love with this team, and I kind of slowly fell out of love with it. I still rated it really highly, um, but I think that it's with top tiers like that, it just feels like you'll never want to bring those low tiers for anything. Um, I think that the having Tentacruel and Regieleki I think is really cool to keep hazards on your side and not get rid of not get or not get rid of them on your opponent's side. One of the things I was talking about when I looked at the approach was what is this team built around? And even if it does have Clefable and Cobalion, I don't really think it's built around necessarily the Dragon Fairy Steel Core as much as it is built around Garchomp. And I think that this team does that pretty well for the most part. Garchomp can set up and beat everything slower than it pretty well, except for maybe some bulky water types and bulky grass types. It does get moves like Poison Jab. You got to get rid of another move that you might want to use in order to fit it on your four move slots. Um, but so when I'm looking at this team, I'm like, how does this team deal with bulky waters and grass types so that Garchomp doesn't have to find that coverage? And I think it deals with bulky water types pretty well, actually, with switch-ins with Tangrowth and and then also maybe offensive checks to it with Regieleki and some of those grass types at the bottom. Um, I think that the question more for me is like with a really really good grass type, how are they breaking through it? Because Regieleki is now its moves resist and your poison type gets hit neutrally to it. So, is it Charizard always? Is it Tentacruel and just hope you outspeed? So that would be maybe if I had two criticisms of it, it would be that yeah, the like how you like how you just like break down the things that Garchomp has trouble with might be a little weak. And I think there's a ground weakness to it. If I scroll down and look at ground, it's going to show where is ground. It's going to show that there's a 0 to its like ground setup. But if you look purely at the top in the tier 100s and above, there's no ground resists and there's 3 ground weaknesses. It takes you to
mhm,
get to Charizard to get to a ground resist. which isn't your favorite ground resist. It shouldn't be your favorite
Right.
ground resist.
Right. Because, yeah, again, the edge quake weakness.
So that would be my big criticism. But overall, I really liked this team. I like that. I like the screens with something like Cobalion. I think Cobalion got a pretty big nerf when it's not allowed to use Z moves. It makes it harder to just actually get that offense going with special attack and attack being at base 90. But if behind screens, yeah, run your Calm Mind, run your Swords Dance. Makes it a lot better.
I think this team is growing on me, looking at it for a second or third time. I do think I was maybe a little harsh with the low tiers.
The like
Um,
weather option without the weather.
yeah, I kind of stuck on that. So I think, you know, I think that Tentacruel is extremely effective with Clefable. Yeah, I think they work well. Like, I think Tentacruel benefits from the wish support, and being able to, um, you know, soak up T spikes. Obviously, Clefable is it gets Magic Guard, but
Right.
maybe it gives you that unaware option one week. Um, yeah, I think
Ooh. Yeah, and
I
even
think the top
Garchomp.
six are very good.
Yeah, Garchomp with rocks up and a toxic spike and screens up is just gonna win every game. If Connor's able to get those sort of conditions in place, holy cow! And even just having some like special attack breaking capabilities with Indeedee and potentially Charizard and even Life Orb like offensive Clefable. If you want that, and then you want your Indeedee and Tentacruel to like cover more of the defensive side of things. Holy cow! This could be a really really cool team.
I think I need to. I think I'm having a little bit trouble visualizing it. I'm
That's fair.
excited to see it, but play out. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. All right. Next up, we have the New York City Ribombee,
Oh yes.
another weather team.
Dun, da, da.
Yeah. So again, like I mentioned earlier, I think the weather teams I rated in general a little bit lower than other teams. This is another sand team again, so this is maybe looks slightly more like a traditional sand team or a team with a sand option, with Gigalith, and then Excadrill, Sandrush, Excadrill, Sandrush, Dracovish. Looks like the sand team. I
Right.
think we see so Zapdos and Mandibuzz, these two together are the most interesting part of this team for me. I think, we have Overcoat Zapdos, which would protect against the sand damage. It's pretty exciting, provides some great support for, like you mentioned earlier with sand teams, you're trying to wear down the opposing team. So providing toxic support, providing knockoff support, some pivot option, and Mandibuzz, I think is very exciting. Um, and Zapdos for me, I wonder, it's obviously a very strong electric type, but on top of that, part of why it's tiered so high, well, there's a lot of reasons. It's because it's amazing. But in some ways, you like Zapdos for the roost and the toxic and the defog. Um, and anyways, um, I wonder a little bit if these two do they overlap too much? Mandibuzz and Zapdos, do they overlap too much, or do they overlap exactly the right amount, um, to
When
make
we were
this
talking,
team?
you can finish. Sorry.
Oh, just to do they improve this team? Do they make it so that, often with both of these Pokemon, um, you might be prepping and you have six moves that you want to put on it, but you only have four slots. So maybe called four move slot syndrome. Um, Maybe these two will cancel each other's four move slot syndrome out,
Right.
because they have such a diverse move pool that overlaps in certain ways. So,
Right.
um,
You want to run offensive Zapdos, but you need the defog, or you want to run like toxic to wear things down, like all sorts of things like that. And yeah, if you can run defog on Mandibuzz, then that frees up a slot on Zapdos. Or if you can run even defog on Zapdos, and that frees up the slot on Mandibuzz for knockoff. And keep Roost. They both maybe probably want to have Roost. So it's 3-move slot syndrome. What are you going to put on those 3 moves? So,
Right.
what I kind of like about this team is there's a lot of investment in Zapdos and Excadrill, both tier 180s, like probably the top tier minus the 6 busted Pokemon. And yet there's still most of the Pokemon are average in their tier or above. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Still 7 Pokemon that are tier 100 and up, while also having 2 tier 180s and Dracovish, which I was like, holy cow, how did this happen?
Oh my gosh.
And so, yeah, that means that after the tier 100s, it really drops. You got 2 tier 20s, a tier 40, and a tier 60. You only have to bring those once, technically. So this has a little bit of like top heaviness to it. But I think that it sort of depends on the coach whether or not that's a bad thing. So Sloop is my friend who I invited into the league. And this is his first time ever drafting. So I think that he has some background in like lower tier Smogon stuff. And so even when I was helping him draft, he was looking at some of the tier 20s and tier 40s and like, wait, why are these so low? They're actually good. You can find good use out of them. And so I think that Vic will have a good time in the league. And I think that, like, if he feels like he can catch up, he hasn't played Pokemon in a few years. So if he can catch up and just get back to a base level of being like playing the game and getting comfortable with it again, I think he is the type of coach that'll find utility out of those low tiers.
Which is, of course, what Draft League is all about, right?
Yeah.
I do have, for these low tiers in particular, I think Girder, we've seen, maybe Sloop doesn't know, but we've seen Girder be extremely effective in our league previously. So I think, everyone can look at this and prep for something like Girder. Golisopod is something that we haven't seen quite as much success with, but I think is a great pick. I do have questions about Golduck and Haunter. Haunter, I wonder if you would ever bring it over Espeon. In my mind, they maybe do similar things with Espeon being faster and hitting harder. And Golduck, in my mind, I don't know very much about Golduck, but in my mind, its premier thing is that it has Cloud9. I wonder if that's actually something that you want on a sand team. I don't know. So, obviously, yeah.
It's probably appropriately tiered, but I could see an argument that it's good for its tier just based on its like a defensive stat line of 80, 78, 80. It's not just going to die to one hit on anything, which most of the tier 20s are going to do. And maybe it doesn't hit that hard, but I know it's like status move pool is pretty large with weird things like yawn and hypnosis. And it also gets flip turn. It's one. It's a Pokemon that gets flip turn. So it's like, yeah, all this stuff sounds good, but why would you ever bring Golduck when you have Dracovish? Why would you ever bring Golduck when you have Ribombee? Or even Golisopod as your other water type. So there's some questions there, but I don't think it's necessarily a wash. Yeah, I really like the sort of tier 100s and above. I think I would have liked it more with Hippowdon. Frankly, I feel so bad. I'm sorry, Vic. I saw that there was another sand team, and Matt had already drafted Tyranitar. And I'm trying to be the good friend that coaches him on like, what do you do during a draft? And I'm like, okay, Matt's already secured his sand setter, and you already secured your like sand abusers and Dracovish and Excadrill. Nobody else is going to pick Hippowdon, so just save it for way late in the draft and use that sort of like strategy to pick up things kind of early, pick up some other things lower down that and grab those. And then Matt grabs 2 sand setters. I felt so bad about it, but I think that Gigalith does do some good for this team. It doesn't have the fire weakness that or no, sorry, the water weakness. No, yeah, wait. It becomes a fire resist where
Mm,
Excadrill doesn't necessarily like, and Dracovish isn't really like the best switch in because you don't want it to get burned.
right.
So I think actually being a fire resist works well for this. And who cares if Gigalith and Excadrill are both weak to ground and fighting when you have things like Zapdos and Mandibuzz that are probably going to come each week that are going to be there to switch in. I think it has some hazard setting options with Gigalith and Excadrill, and Ribombee, Golisopod, and then the amount of hazard removal on your side ends up being pretty great too. Zapdos, Mandibuzz, Ribombee, I'm pretty sure. Also
Yep.
Girder, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And the
Excadrill.
yeah, and Excadrill, and yeah, you might even just want to run Rapid Spin on Excadrill just to boost your speed anyway. So it's almost like you have almost like similar to like how Espeon is going to deter hazards. Yeah, so it's good in the sense that if you want a hazard stack, you can pretty easily. I like that there's some speed and some webs so that Dracovish can be more versatile. It can run Sand Rush on this team. I think it can also run Strong Jaw pretty well on this team as well, given the hazard support and just given the overall offensive pressure and speed that it has. Maybe you run Fast Zapdos, or you have Espeon, or you have Ribombee, and Dracovish can run Adamant. Or
Like, you gotta succeed with Dracovish, just to help me prove my point, prove
what's
that
your
I'm
point?
right. Oh, just that it's good. I don't think it's the worst tier 160. Don't at me, Andy.
That's funny.
Um, it's good. There are not 51 other Pokemon in Draft League that are better than Dracovish.
That's
I do
funny.
not believe that.
And I think
Um,
before people used to be so scared about it that everyone drafted a water immunity. We would get everyone had Seismitoad and Quagsire. I don't even know, like, or no, what's the other
yeah,
one
yeah.
down there? And so,
Gastrodon.
Gastrodon. I think as there became more Pokemon available, the amount of water immunities there are is technically the same amount, but on that are drafted is less. So Dracovish gets this is just less counter drafted as you have things like Tapu Lele and Rillaboom with Grassy Glide that you now have to prep for.
Okay, and here's my hot take about Dracovish. So, we talk a lot about how versatility is a good thing in Draft League, and the more and I think, and maybe when we first started this, it was kind of like, does it get Dragon Dance? Then it's a good Pokemon. Does it get Shell Smash? Then it's a good Pokemon. Um, and maybe there's this sense that we've like evolved beyond that thinking. But Dracovish is still good just because it doesn't have versatility. It's extremely good at the thing that it does. And
Right.
just because you know it's coming doesn't mean that it's easy or even possible for every team to prep for. So,
Right.
and
Maybe Dracovish
anyway,
doesn't have variety, but because you have something that's very linear, it actually means that your other things can be opened up to be that variety. You don't need Excadrill to try to break through these just like impossible walls. You don't need to run Swords Dance on it because you have a wall breaker. It's like Pangoro or Darmanitan. Like you have these things that hit really freaking hard. Then like you don't have to look for that. You don't need to look for the calcs so that Excadrill can Oko shit. You already have Dracovish for that.
I do object a little bit to Dracovish being compared to Darmanitan. Well, maybe Galarian Darmanitan. Um,
No, I meant regular Darmanitan, which I think is just like a good wall breaker. I mean, they're good for different things. Dracovish, yeah, we're gonna disagree. I think that it's what you're saying is that Dracovish is good and maybe has some variety, but it's okay that it doesn't have everything. I'm saying
yes.
that even if Dracovish was completely linear, it is still good because of what that sort of one-dimensional nature is can do for the rest of your Pokemon. So we're like
Just
We're like
Yeah.
agreeing and disagreeing about
Yeah.
where Dracovish
Maybe
fits.
we shouldn't get into it
Yeah.
anymore here. But that's fine.
There's a fucking
That's
cool
fine.
team. There's a lot better than my first draft, and I think yeah, just a
I
good draft
remember you
overall.
had Manaphy and Fion. That was
Yeah, that
not
was a
it was a
random
random
draft,
draft, but
but
oh my
yes, for
gosh.
sure.
Oh,
I
my
think
other quick I just have lots of random notes about Pokemon. My other thing, just Excadrill is every time I look at it, I'm like, why is it rated tier 180? And then 3 rounds into the draft, I'm like, man, I would love to get something. It's like kind of good speed and kind of good attack. And if it had rocks, that would be great. And, I really need some hazard removal now. And then I'm like, oh man, Excadrill
when I
would
had
be good.
Excadrill, I was like, this shit doesn't die. Even if you look at its base defense and SPDEF as 60 and 65, having a 110 HP just makes this thing live forever. And you can really that's really beneficial for teams. And yeah, even with the buff and rapid spin, also even just mold breaker and earthquake and steel move. Just its stab
Teams
moves.
have a Rotom.
Yeah. Yeah, people have Rotoms. People even okay. What if they have a flying type? How much is Ironhead doing to that flying type? It's still doing a whole lot to it, even if it's just neutral damage. This thing is, I think, really really good. And I think, yeah, I just think it. You can do anything with it, and you don't need to run like max speed, max attack for it to do a lot of damage and to be faster than things.
Yeah.
So this is a cool team. I'm stoked for
Yeah.
it.
It should be good.
Oh yeah,
Thanks.
the
Oh,
last little thing that I'll say about it is that with what I appreciate about this team is the amount of pivot options there are. Zapdos can Volt Switch into Excadrill, or Zapdos can Volt Switch into Dracovish. Mandibuzz can get off a U-turn, can bring you into Dracovish or into your Gigalith to set up Sand. I think even Ribombee gets U-turns. You can Webs U-turn and save your Ribombee's life for another time. So yeah, just the amount of ways to get in the Pokemon that are going to be successful, I think are pretty high.
yeah, I think that's a great point.
Cool.
Yeah. All right.
Um,
On to
the
the
Venusaurs.
Venusaurs. I like this team also.
Cool. Well, talk about why you like it.
Well, I'm navigating there.
Okay,
Okay, this
I'll
is
talk
another
about it.
team. No, no, I got it. This is another team that I looked at and I said, wow, this looks an awful lot like an OU team. It has Coco and it has Kyurem and it has Cinderace and Skarmory and Seismitoad. I think
And
those
Raichu.
five and Raichu. Yeah, don't sleep on that Surge Surfer Rising Voltage Raichu. Um, yeah, I think that this team is just it just has a ton of options. Um, I think let's see, like hazards. Obviously, we have Skarmory and Seismitoad, which are
That's all you
um,
need.
yeah, you don't need anything else. Um, and then uh, Court Change is really good. You may not think of it as a removal option, but I think it's
Right.
appropriate there. Um, Heracross gets spikes. Drapion gets toxic spikes. So this team has a ton of different, excuse me, hazard options. I think that if I remember right, I really like the speed tiers on this team. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're very good.
130, 119, 110, 95,
Yeah.
90, 95.
95, 95, 90, 85, 74, 70. It's all very, very good.
And
59. Yeah.
there's a little bit of a way to counter Trick Room by having Clawitzer, but I don't really think there's much Trick Room potential on the teams that were drafted.
Think so either. There was, there's a little bit of utility with terrain pulse, Clawitzer on electric
Hmm.
terrain, but you also have, you have actually a couple synergies, right? Like the Alolan Raichu, like you
Yeah,
pointed out. Um,
Kling Klang also gets
Steel
Steel
Roller.
Roller, and I think
Yep.
it also gets the it also gets Surging Strike, which have
Uh-oh.
70 special attack, and I think being one of the only non-electric types to get that move might actually throw someone off guard if they bring in their bulky water type to go against the steel type. You might actually get some cool damage off.
Yeah, I think hold on. Let me check my notes.
I don't think there's a bad Pokemon on this team. I think out of all the teams, I think that this one has the best 11.
Mhm.
I think that Alolan Raichu at tier 60 when you have Tapu Koko, not only does it speed double and it's and surging strike, is that what it's called, double, but I think it's points double. I think it's at least a tier 120 Pokemon on an electric terrain team. I think that maybe one of the only things about it is that having your only floating Pokemon being Skarmory, and what's your other ground resist, Heracross and Decidueye, that could probably be difficult. But I'm scrolling down here to the type matchup. Actually, I'm gonna scroll up first, and maybe let's try to identify the defensive core. I think it's probably Skarmory, Decidueye, Seismitoad, maybe
Yeah.
Drapion. So if I
Yeah, I
scroll
think
down
so.
here, those are all right next to each other on the thing. There's not really a type that does well against really any all of those. Actually,
You have Ghost,
ice,
um, Dark,
but even
Ice.
ghost, you have a Drapion switching.
That's true. There's yeah.
So ice, not really anything really like that's. I think that there's some decent synergy in those, and you have even in if that's your defensive core, then you're bringing those a lot of weeks, and those also are your Pokemon that have defog and have hazards and things like that. So I think that's really cool. I think that Coco isn't the offensive, doesn't even have the offensive pressure that it had last season or last generation with Z moves. I think it lost a lot without Z moves, and obviously the terrain's got a little bit of a nerf as well.
Mhm.
It makes its physical attacking side a little bit worse because it doesn't have a physical fairy move, and it's wild charge. You can't, like with Z wild charge, at least you can get one really good attack that isn't causing recoil damage. And its attack is its best stat. So there's some ways that Tapu Koko is worse, which I think becomes just a challenge to its piloters to ask what else Tapu Koko is good at. I think it actually is a decent bulky Pokemon if you run HP on it. I think it's good as a setup Pokemon, both with Defog and Roost and U-Turn or Volt Switch. I think the dual screen sets that you'll see with either Taunt and U-Turn or Electric Move, like Dazzling Gleam and U-Turn, like you can get some really good potential utility out of it. And then the question is, does the team benefit from that? And I think this team does. I think having Kyurem behind screens is very scary. I think having Drapion behind screens lets it last longer, or like even just Alolan Raichu. I'm really happy with this team.
I think you're right to point out that Coco lacks the offensive presence that it had last gen. I think similar things about so Cinderace obviously wasn't around last gen, but it's an incredibly high pointed tier 140 Pokemon. And we run the Blaze only, so we don't have Libero. Um, so I think in general, what I noticed about this team is it has deceptively less oomph than it might seem at
Hmm.
first glance. You really have to coax that like offensive presence out of Seismitoad, I think, or
Right.
Decidueye.
Right.
Um, obviously, Kyurem is
Yeah.
incredible. And it can run physical or special, but I think that the offensive ability of the team shouldn't necessarily just rest on Kyurem. And I'm not saying that Cinderace can't make it happen,
Right.
And Tapu Koko can't make it happen because they can. But I wonder, again, with these like OU style teams, is the offense offensive enough and is the defense defensive enough?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? That's my
Yeah.
question. Um,
I think we'll probably see that actually with my team. That would be a good question to ask. But also, and another thing is, I think there's like some. If you just look at the type synergy between Skarmory and Seismitoad, it's perfect. There's like just the steel flying and water ground is just one of the best things. We've had that before with Swampert and Celesteela. That's just like known to be really, really good. What I think could happen, and I'll have this criticism, I think even with your team potentially too, Adam, is when the synergies are that perfect, it might put you in a 50-50 scenario where you have Skarmory out and in front of, I don't know, an electric Pokemon, and so you're like, I should definitely go into Seismitoad. Is this electric Pokemon going to have grass knot coverage for it? And you might run into problems where your opponent's hand is forced, and then you have to predict whether or not they're going to respond to that forced hand or not.
we should
So
edit that out. Sean, Sean, that's your worst nightmare. You don't want to go into the season
Sean,
thinking
run,
about that.
Sean, run, protect. I
Yes.
promise it'll save you. It'll save you years of trouble.
Yes.
So
It just kicks the can down the road, then you have to do the same thing next turn.
yeah, run, protect twice. Run 2 moves and then protect twice. I'm ready. Cool. Yeah, this is. I really like this team.
I think it's great.
I think it's gonna be a good one for Sean too because Sean's now in the top conference. So
Ah, nice.
I think it'll be great.
Man, I was
Great for him.
hoping, I'm going to be honest, I saw that I was in the top conference and I was a little bit hoping that I was in the bottom conference. But we just have a lot of, when you add three coaches and they don't have a previous record, then uh, I just got bumped up, I guess. So,
Oh, because you
yeah.
otherwise wouldn't have made it.
I don't think so. I was technically 4-5. I had to forfeit at least one
So with a
match.
losing record, you got pushed into the top conference. Okay.
I know. Oh my
Well,
gosh.
welcome.
Anyway, I'm
Um,
prepared to get my ass handed to me this
right,
season.
exactly. I'm gonna
Or
switch it over. I'm gonna switch it over to my team because I'm next. Um,
yeah. Okay. Let me talk about this.
as you talk about it, I'm going to go to the bathroom and I'll come back and have my own comments. Hopefully, they don't overlap too much.
Oh my gosh, they probably will.
All right, cool.
Wow.
You go
Okay.
first.
Okay. So it's just me, folks. So the first thing that you'll notice about Kyle's team is that he drafted two terrain setters, which is a little bit unusual, especially because there's no terrain abusers on this team, except unless you want to count Steel Roller Caoirigh. So he has Rillaboom and Tapu Lele. And I was asking him about it in the middle of the draft, and he basically said that, what's the synergy between them? The synergy is that everything that Rillaboom doesn't kill, Lele kills. And I guess I agree with that. They're both incredibly, Rillaboom's incredibly bulky. Obviously, Trispan Grassy Glide is extremely good. Lele at base speed 95 can run specs with 130 special attack very easily. There's not a lot. Maybe you have some steel types that are resisting both of those. Um, and so what does he have for steel types? Well, Nidoqueen comes in with Earth Power. I don't think Nidoqueen gets Fire Blast. And Moltres, you get Mian Chao. So he's got quite a few things for that. Kyle's very excited about his defensive core of Vaporeon and Moltres. Maybe Nidoqueen is defensive as well. Um, and he'll talk about that, I'm sure.
I'm here.
Oh, hi. One thing that I want to say is that the hazard setup and hazard removal, I think, is not very good on this team. I think basically it's Nidoqueen with a Caparasha option for hazard setting, which is I mean, Nidoqueen's good at hazard setting, but it's a little unfortunate because it's good at a lot of things. And so it's maybe a little bit locked into hazard setting role. You also have Moltres and Noivern with Defog. If you're running, I know Kyle doesn't want to run Noivern every week. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but that's putting you in the position of bringing heavy duty boots Moltres pretty often. So you're starting to get locked in there with your options, especially so say you're bringing Rillaboom, Tapu Lele, Nidoqueen, Moltres. Anyway, those don't look. That doesn't look like an OU top four to me in the way that other teams have had an OU top four. Excuse me, but it's still going to be four that are pretty predictable to be bringing every week, and so I think that's going to put Kyle at a little bit of a disadvantage. Um, but if we look at, and so again, I guess remember we're talking about these like some teams are kind of OU-esque. I think this is like a draft league team. This is a draft league team. These are Moltres is good in draft league. Vaporeon has a huge history in our draft league. What's your Vaporeon nickname going to be?
Probably Vape Nation just to
Yeah, got a rep.
satiate the audience. I want
Yeah.
to have fans. My goal this season is to have fans, to have a fan base. I'm kidding.
Yeah, the league's big enough. Yeah, so I think this looks like a draft league team to me. Nidoqueen has always been very good in draft league. Mia Chao is a great base 105 Pokemon with Regenerator, Knockoff, a Jump Kick, Ice Punch, great coverage. So Zoroark is classic in draft league. We've seen Connor use it many times, and I'm sure some other coaches too. But I think the low tiers are pretty good on this team. Noivern, I think, has great utility for its tiering, in that it is very fast and it has the right. It's base 123. It fills that dragon type niche that you might be lacking if you don't draft one right away. So I think that's pretty good. Caoirigh actually I think is under tiered. I think it's really good. Sheer Force Life Orb is great. It gets Stealth Rocks. It's good on this team because of Steel Roller, which gets rid of terrain. So that's pretty nice. Xcloud, Scrappy Boom Burst. Spec Scrappy Boom Burst is great, but it also gets great coverage moves like Fire Blast and Surf, which might, for example, you might be bringing in your fire type against Rillaboom, um, and be surprised that Xcloud can counter it. So, and Pikachu, of course, gets the lightning ball. Is that what it's called? Electric ball?
Light ball.
Light ball. So maybe this has some additional utility that's surprising. So I think the utility is there. I think the synergy is I am waiting. I want it proven to me. I don't want to just grant that this team has good synergy. And I think that the hazard control is not great, which is unfortunate. The hazards and hazard control, which is unfortunate because I think Rillaboom and Lele would really benefit from like hazard stacking. So I don't know. I guess those are my thoughts. I think the team is. I think it's pretty good. I think that you have drafted better teams. I think you're going to use it well. I think you're going to have fun with it. Because you like a lot like Moltres. Oh my gosh, I just have to share this story where we were talking, Kyle and I were talking about the tier list before the draft, and I said I think Moltres is under tiered. I think it should be at least one, maybe two tiers higher. And Kyle said, I don't know. And then I don't think so. I think it's fine. And then he drafted it third overall or third round.
My third pick was a tier 100 Pokemon.
So I just wanna lay that right there. But I think you'll have a lot of fun with this team. I think you'll do well with it. But I think you've had better teams in the past.
That's interesting. I think that in the past, so my approach this time was a little bit of like, I think the past few drafts I've just been pretty bored of the metas. So I try these like funky things. And for as many times as we've drafted, I barely ever just like, I guess, go back to things that I've enjoyed, or, it's always try something new. I think this time I was a little bit more like, well, I draft two things up front that you've never used before that you think are good. And then after that, just fill it with things that you like. And I think I did
Definitely
that.
did that.
I definitely did that pretty well. Some of these Pokemon I think I've changed my tune on. I don't think I've liked Zoroark in the past, and I know I didn't previously like Mienshao, but I think this season or this generation at getting close combat has changed my mind on it. I don't think I think I've drafted each of these Pokemon before, except for Nidoqueen and Zoroark and Exploud.
Have
Pikachu.
Nidoqueen yet?
No, I don't. I don't know. But this just feels like a very Kyle team. I think when I'm looking at it, I think that I was talking to some people as the draft started, and I was like, I'm getting Rillaboom, and then if it's or no, I got Tapu Lele, and I was like, oh, who are you gonna get to complement it? And I was like, oh, do I get Halucha? I was like, I think I'll just get Rillaboom. It doesn't. They don't really have synergy per se, except that Rillaboom kills half of the things that can be drafted, and Tapu Lele kills probably the other half of things that can be drafted. So I guess that's synergy. They're two wall breakers. After that, it's like, well, I don't really necessarily have these cleanup hitters. Maybe Mienshao, maybe Noivern. Rillaboom could be a cleanup hitter for sure. But then it's like, I think if this was like a choose your character in a game where you had Mario and Luigi and all that, I think this is a very Mario team. I think that it's jack of all trades, maybe master of none. Maybe it's a master of Rillaboom Lele, but it's not even like I have any other terrain users. It's not even like so. And like you said, I have some hazards, but not really a lot. I have some defog, but not really a lot. So yeah, I think I'm going to like this team. I think I'm going to be a little bit annoyed by some weeks where I'll just be forced to bring a specific Moltres set. But for me, I really like this Vaporeon Moltres Nidoqueen. If I scroll down here to the typing things and we just ignore the Mienshao that's in the middle of it, oh wait, no, then I think you're going to see that there's quite a bit of synergy in these. There's not really an option where, if you include Mienshao, you have your flying. I guess none of them resist ghost or normal attacks, but other than that, they cover each other pretty well. Not perfectly, but pretty well. There's maybe a lack of, unless Vaporeon is running Wish every week, there's a lack of recovery on the team. I like it though. I think I'm gonna I'm choosing to have fun this season, so I'm picking Pokemon that I want to have fun with. Maybe if I saved the Moltres pick to round 4 or 5, then I could have drafted a better Steel type, because Adam said he likes Caoirigh. I think I would rather a different one to be my fairy switch-in.
That's definitely fair.
Or
Yeah,
a dragon.
Moltres is very switch-in.
Maybe I'll say dragon switch-in then.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm just going to like throw Tapu Lele in. Like, oh, it's a dragon type. Guess I'll throw in my best Pokemon and hope it doesn't get hit with another move other than a dragon type move. So there's some. I have some reservations with, especially my Steel type. And so maybe I could have drafted that before Moltres. Honestly, as the draft was going, though, I was just like, when you draft Rillaboom Lele, there's not really like a what do you do next sort of thing. And so I was like, oh, I want this. I want Moltres Nidoqueen and a bulky water type. And I just felt like out of those three, Moltres had the least number of substitutes. If someone drafted Nidoqueen, I had Nidoking. If someone drafted Vaporeon, there's a whole bunch of other bulky water types. So that was the only reason I drafted it third, not because I thought it was undervalued in the tier system. Because
That's
I was like, if I can get Rillaboom Lele and then just have a defensive core of Nidoqueen, Moltres, and a water type, great.
yeah, that's
So
certainly
that's the
fair.
story, and I'm sticking to it. Otherwise, yeah, I think I would just have, I think I hopefully have fun with this team. Hopefully, it's not too linear. Hopefully, I'm not boxed into bringing certain Moltres sets or certain Vaporeon sets. Or Rillaboom sets, but if I am boxed in those ways, then hopefully I can find unique move sets and items to use on some of these Pokemon. I either win offensively or I win because everything's holding leftovers.
We get it. You're gonna win no matter
Or
what.
I'm not. I do think that like you said, I think that it's a problem with this team that it's not 5 OU Pokemon.
I don't know if it's a problem, but it is noteworthy that I think that's the meta this season.
Yeah,
It's
that's what
OU.
I was gonna say. In the abstract, this looks good, but I think given what other teams have drafted, then I think it starts to look bad.
Yeah. I guess we'll
Uh,
see. Why don't we move on to my favorite team, the
Ooh,
Braviarys.
spoiler.
Yeah, not necessarily what I think is the best team, but this is my favorite team.
Let me talk about it
Um,
first, then, since
wait.
so you can gush on it.
Oh, I have to go to the. Oh yeah. Okay, I'll go to the bathroom while you talk on it.
Okay, cool. So, Baltimore Braviarys, this is a team that I feel like I would draft. Every time Colin and I draft, I think similar style teams. I don't think it's as simple as the fact that we watch the same YouTube videos. I think we have a decently similar play style in general. Just things that can live hits and can hit hard. Um, I just think that this is full of Pokemon that are proven to do well in Draft League. Yeah, when I'm looking at this team, obviously the first overall pick was this tier 180 Darmanitan, which has previously been banned. This is the first time it's been included, and maybe it's under tiered, or maybe it shouldn't even be in the league. Either it could be 200, it should be banned, 200, 180, and we put it in the lower of those three categories. When it comes to Darmanitan, I think the thing that makes it hard is that it can counter most other top tier Pokemon with ice coverage, fire coverage, and ground coverage, and a way to pivot. It covers nearly all the Tapus, near all of the dragons, the fire types, etc. So I think it has some great utility like that, with it sort of with its ability Guerrilla Tactics, it pretty much has all of its moves are stab moves that you're locked into, and so that makes it very difficult to figure out. I think that there are going to be some games where Colin runs Choice Scarf Darmanitan and just 6-0 teams. And I think that my hunch is that Darmanitan is counterable in Draft League, where it is not counterable in OU. I think that there are ways to break it. I think that even just running hazards, his team has to answer to that. Otherwise, Darmanitan is taking 25% every time it comes in, or he's running heavy duty boots on it and he's not hitting as hard or he's not as fast as if you were to run Choice Band or Choice Scarf. So I think that Darmanitan, my hunch is that it's counterable. I also hope that so that I don't feel guilty for keeping it as low as it was. But I think Colin drafted it because it is because he thinks that it has value in its current tier. So
Kyle keeps sending me these calcs. I'll just wake up and he's Discord messaged me a calc of somebody like the most recent one was, but
don't
I don't
tell
want to
him all of
share.
them.
I
Yeah,
don't
just
want to
tell
share,
the
but
obvious one.
like,
The easiest one on my team would be Rillaboom, which does like Choice Band Grassy Glide Okos Darmanitan. So
send me.
this ice type wall breaker that has a faster speed than Rillaboom is just losing to it. That's
So
one example.
yeah, anyway, I'll just wake up to some of those sometimes. So
Yeah.
we'll see. I think that just
Adam,
because it's counterable.
all I talked about was the first pick, Darmanitan, and where I think that it's either going to be really good or it's going to be counterable. I think it's going to be a mixture of both.
Yeah, I think that so, like you said, the one of the main ways to counter it is hazards because you don't want to be locked into running heavy duty boots every week. Luckily, the Braviaries drafted Latias, Rotom Heat, Delmise, Aerodactyl, Hitmonchan as really, really incredible hazard removal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, any and all of those could be really great. And in the same way that you were talking about with, oh, who was it that drafted Torrentee? Is it Matt? Um, I can't
Uh,
remember. Um,
I
anyway,
don't think it
who
was on a weather team.
it
No, it
was the
was
Beartics.
yeah, Beartics. It was Jirachi Como, Weezing,
In
and
the
Torn.
same way that the Beartics lower picks frees up Torrentee to do whatever, I think this team looks really, really good even without Galarian Darmanitan. I think it supports Latias extremely well.
Hmm.
So just with thinking about Grimmsnarl, all the prankster things that it can do supports Latias, also happens to support Galarian Darmanitan. Um, just like thunder waving and statusing, which allows Latias to kind of do its defensive thing, or the screens allow it Latias to maybe run like Calm Mind, like an offensive situation. We've obviously seen Rotom Heat and Swampert be really effective defensively. So I might call the defensive core Swampert, Rotom Heat, Latias. Um,
Hmm.
but we also know that all three of those can be offensive.
And
Uh,
Slowking, Galar, and Delmise, I think are also like I think that there's like a pretty big variety of what the core could be.
I think this team is extremely good. I always love Hitmonchan. I think it is extremely useful in draft league for its fighting type with really good special defense, and it can run assault vest, but also keep hazard removal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's extremely, and it has priority. I think that's
Right.
really, really good for low tier. I've drafted it several times, and I always get good value out of it. Um, yeah, great speed control with Aerodactyl. And what else? Latias. So that means you don't have to scarf Galarian Darmanitan. Um, I'm excited to see Zen mode on it a couple times.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I'm really hype about this team. I think pretty much every pick. I don't really know what Galarian Linoon does. Um, but aside from that, I think everything on this team is great and has good synergy.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. I don't think I love it as much as you. I kind of had it back and forth between either being my favorite one in my second tier or make actually breaking into like the top tier. Just because there's some things that I think everything you said is right. Some of the things that I'm looking at are having the only things faster than 100 speed being Aerodactyl and Latias. So that I think puts pressure on Latias to run speed when you keep including it in your defensive core. Maybe the defensive core is wide enough that you can run offensive Latias. I think that is definitely still a possibility too. I think because and so not only are there things that are very fast, except Aerodactyl and Latias, but even among the like what you would call the like standard fast zone between 85 and 100, you have Rotom Heat and Darmanitan. If you want to include Linoon, sure, but I'm not going to for right now.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so so now you have two potentially good Scarfers, two of the best in Rotom Heat and Darmanitan, but sort of that might leave positions open for a Pokemon like HÉireann to really eat up this team if you can't
Mm.
challenge it on the in that sort of very crucial speed tier between 85 and 100. So and I think that I think that this team starts to look less good when you start thinking, oh, and one of the things I love about the team is the pivot options there are, even in just like
Oh
Swampert,
yeah, there's so
Rotom
many.
Heat, Darmanitan. Just include those, and then I'll call it the pivot option in Slowking, in that it gets Regenerator. So I think the pivots are incredible. Where I think maybe this team's weakness lies is in its how prone to knockoff it is. Not much wants to get knocked off on this team. Aerodactyl looks less good without its boots. Slowking looks less good without its item and the fact that it's weak to it. Latios is weak to knockoff. Rotom Heat likes its item as well. Dhelmise doesn't want to get hit with a super effective move. Darmanitan likes its item. So there's a lot of, Swampert, if you can knock off its leftovers, it's a lot worse, in my opinion. So I think that Colin having to figure out inside his prep, like what has knockoff on the other team, how do I make sure that the Pokemon that I need to win the game with aren't getting their items knocked off, I think will be sort of the assuming his opponent's doing the right things and trying to counter specifically this team. It's I need to get hazards off the field and I need to make sure I keep my items are going to be the things that Colin needs to win. In my opinion, I think that makes it. I think that's a little tough. I do think, besides Linoon, I think that the fact that this team has so much great top tier Pokemon, I think Aggron, Hitmonchan, and Aerodactyl are amazing picks below 100. This team only has 4 Pokemon below 100. I think 3 of them are amazing. I think Aerodactyl might be under tiered. I think Hitmonchan is appropriately tiered, but really good for its tier. And I think Aggron might also be under tiered. I mean, we haven't really used it before, but it gets body press with a base defense of 180. I think without hidden powers, its quad weaknesses are less important, and when its quad weaknesses are ground and fighting, and you also have a Latias. Cool. So I think that the low tiers work really well with the high tiers. There's just some things that that make me not even question, but just some. This is a team. In my other league, I had a team that had Chansey and Latios, and a couple other Pokemon that wanted their items, and so I just felt like I'm I guess acutely aware of a sort of weakness to knockoff. So
yeah, I think that's really good to point out. One, I have not a hot take. I don't know. I wrote down that it was a hot take. I don't think it is. I think Grimmsnarl is too slow. I think it's less good. Well, I think we've lowered its tier pretty much every single season since it released.
Yeah.
I had it last season, and I didn't even wind up bringing it very often. It just winds up not being that useful. It can do screens very well, or maybe it is useful.
Yeah, you brought it 3 times last season. You spent so much of your points on it to bring it 3 times.
I know, and this is 120 points this time. It's too slow. It should be. It has offensive utility and good typing, but it's too slow to make use of it. And
dang, if this got Prankster and Parting Shot and it could pivot, holy cow, it would be too busted.
It's just missing something. That's my.
I think it's Parting Shot. I think it'd be a Parting Shot, because then you could just Parting Shot into a minus whatever and then go to Rotom Heat or whatever.
So hopefully it'll be good, Colin. I wonder. I often felt like it was. I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. So that sucks too.
Yeah, I often felt like it was the 7th Pokemon I wanted to bring. So tell me if you feel similarly.
I hate this team then. No, I'm kidding. No, I still really like the team a lot.
Let's see.
We'll go to number 10. Orlando Magikarp.
There's a lot of teams this season.
This was the last tier 200 Pokemon picked. I don't think it needed to last to the 10th pick. I think that if it got drafted in the top 5, I still would have felt like it was appropriate. It just lasted all the way to Ben to be able to get. Somehow got Melmetal and then Latios. Holy cow.
Oh my gosh. Those are extremely good.
And they're good together. Do they have any weaknesses? Shared? No.
Latios has a lot of weaknesses.
Yeah,
Let's
but
see.
Melmetal has none of those. Steel types have what? Ground types, fighting types, fire types?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dark. They both don't
Melmetal's
like
not weak to
knockoff.
dark. I mean, yeah,
Well, yeah,
it
yeah,
doesn't like knockoff, but it also can take it.
yeah. That's true.
Cool. So yeah,
Anyway,
that's a cool duo.
hmm this was the first team that I looked at and I said, wow, this looks a whole lot like an OU team. And I think Ben actually has a proper six. He could literally bring these top six in OU. Melmetal, Latios, Entei, Milotic, Nidoking, Tangrowth.
Hmm.
Um,
Even Comfy could be an OU
yeah,
Pokemon.
yeah. It's anyway, absolutely wild. I think that um, you might be hard pressed to bring your low tiers, but Ben's had success with Morpeko and Dottler in the past. I had Miltank last season, and it you can definitely find 1 week to bring it. And you've had Marini before, and it's extremely useful.
Yep. Marini's best
Um,
tier 20. I almost drafted it with Vaporeon this time. Just because
but
I
yeah,
love it. I love it that much.
it's great. That was actually the one Pokemon that got I got sniped for was
That's
Marini.
funny. Yeah. And
That's okay.
you were even like, I'm the last overall pick. It's probably not even gonna you're like,
Oh,
there's a possible world where it doesn't make it to me.
oh yeah, yeah. I think it's definitely one of the very good tier 20s. So I was happy
Right.
to get Clefairy also, but T Spikes is always useful.
Yeah, this team is cool because of, like I said, I think there's some synergy in the offense. You have a physical attacker in Melmetal, special attacker in Latios, and then you have this defensive core of Milotic, Nidoking, Tangrowth, which
Mm.
all live everything and either recover off or have good resistances or provide stealth rocks. I just think those are, like, even Milotic Tangrowth is a really cool little duo because they have pivot and regenerator and recovery. I guess feels like a Ben team, except if Ben like finally wanted to draft some offense. There's still all the staples. Maybe not the bulkiest psychic type, but yeah, like there's the staple sort of Ben picks of being able to live a lot and recover. I think the hazards are pretty great, actually. Even maybe there's could be another stealth rocker. Actually, yeah,
It's kind of like how it feels a little bit like your hazards to
yeah.
me. It's like, do you really want King to be the one running Stealth Rocks every week?
The removal is the difficult part. Is it
Hmm.
more? Is it more Pico? Wait, is it does Comfy get defog?
It does.
Okay, never mind. I didn't when I did my when I just wrote on my paper. I don't think I put that. And Latios. So okay, so there's some there.
And I never wanted to click defog with Comfy because it's not that. Triage is pretty great with Draining Kiss, but it's not very bulky.
Yeah, you
Um,
kind of have to bring it in, assuming that they'll switch out.
right. And you want to be attacking every turn so that you can heal every turn. So,
Right.
I
Yeah,
kind
it's
of felt
not like
like,
other defoggers also have roost, so you
yeah,
can
like,
take the hit and recover it back.
right. This gets synthesis, but then you want more than I always wanted more than two move slot. Like it also gets U-turn. Anyway, I just like had trouble putting defog on it in the past.
Uh-huh.
And actually clicking defog when I was in a position to do so.
Right.
So
So when I'm looking
um,
at this team, I'm looking at Melmetal and what does Melmetal need to succeed? And I think that it doesn't really handle steals necessarily the best. Like other steel types, can get body press or even earthquake and stuff. This has those moves, but what you're wanting to do most weeks with Melmetal is to just run choice
just
band,
ban double iron bash.
double iron
Yeah.
bash, maybe with like thunder punch coverage for the flying types,
Mhm.
or like the water types. And so when I'm looking at this team, how does this deal with steel types? And it's like Nidoking and Entei and even like Milotic, I think are really good answers to steel types. So and Latios now gets Mystical Fire. Latios and Melmetal kind of have trouble with steel types, so making sure that Nidoking stays healthy long enough to break down the steel type. The cool thing is Entei hits on the physical side and Nidoking hits on the special side, so you can kind of build whichever, it's like Entei might not do the best against Skarmory. Maybe it does, but Nidoking does. Nidoking does great against Skarmory. So
Right.
I think there's some synergy there.
Here's the thing that I'm worried about with this team, or I just wonder, and maybe this is true of every team, and I just happen to notice it with this team, but a lot of Pokemon get Earthquake as a coverage move, right? You have Melmetal, Entei, Nidoking that are weak to ground. Not a big deal in and of itself, but I was just thinking about, looking at the top six then Latios and Tangrowth share an ice weakness. How many Pokemon get ice types with ground coverage? Like, I was just thinking about like Mamoswine and Nidoking, or how many dragon types with ground coverage are there? A lot. And so I'm just thinking about that, Milotic and Tangrowth don't
So even
resist
if this
dragon.
like type matchup graph looks good,
Right.
it's like in practice, each of the dragon types is going to have Earthquake.
So that's kind of the thing that I worry about this team is that it'll just seem like every single week, oh, they just happen to have the one Pokemon that 6-0s my team.
Dag nabbit.
Um, yeah, I sort of
How convenient.
right. And that's like even though there's a lot of synergy between like you pointed out with like Bilotic and Tangrowth and with Latios and Melmetal and Latios and Entei, I just worry that prepping will be difficult for Ben and easy for Ben's opponents just because of how it happened to work out with these typings.
Yeah. I think for me, that speed I think is going to matter. A lot of people have. I almost said Zeraora, which nobody has. But a Dragapult or a Tapu Koko, just a premier fast Pokemon, and I would like it. I think I said this too about the the Latios team at least had Aerodactyl. The Latios team, Latios is the fastest thing, and it doesn't really have a good choice scarfer below it.
Hey,
Entei,
no.
not really.
Nidoking is a good choice scarfer, but
Yeah, but then you can't run
you
Life
need it
Orb.
for rocks.
Yeah, and you need it for Stealth Rock. So there's some sort of speed control problems I think that might matter with this team. However there is sticky webs, and honestly there's like I think a pretty decent Milotic Tangrowth might be the most survivable of the defensive cores. I don't think anyone drafted something that is as effective at just switching into most of the draft as those two.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Honestly, yeah, just I think sometimes we overlook like a monotyping, but yeah, monotyping can be extremely helpful.
what do you mean by that?
Um,
Like just like
so ta
spamming Brave Bird?
no, no, no. So sorry, Milotic is only water type,
Oh
and
yes,
Entei is
yes.
only fire type, and Tangrowth is only grass type. This is
Yeah,
like the
that's a good
classic.
Firewater Grass core, and it's not like they have any quad weaknesses or any shared weaknesses.
Right, exactly. And so there's something you so you can see this if you look at Latios, where it's if you just go to Smogon, you don't have to do this, Ben or Kyle,
Kyle.
but
Yeah.
just listener, if you go to Smogon and look at Latios, it resists 6 typings, but it's also weak to 6 typings,
Mm-hmm.
just based on having like Dragon and Psychic. And so,
Right.
and then offensively,
And Psychic and Dragon are two of the best typings offensively.
exactly. And so, anyway, there's in some ways Ben's defensive core is improved by having actually fewer resistances because there are also fewer weaknesses. So,
Right.
anyway, just maybe counterintuitive, but I think
Cool.
it's good.
Yeah.
I do like this team. I worry about this team, but I like this team a lot.
Yeah. I think Ben's gonna have a good time with it. I think he's gonna have
Oh
fun.
yeah,
Um, is Ben's in the top conference?
yeah. I think he must be. He did better than me last season. So
Yeah.
6-3.
So there might be some difficult Pokemon and some difficult coaches that catch him off. But I think he's gonna have fun.
Next, we have the Huston Haxorus. What team? Oh yeah, Shifu Rapid Strike. This was on its way to being Rain Team. I thought, but then um, I know Andy drafted Pelipper, and then Ian opted not to go for Politoed. So even though, Gudra has an option, Thunder Incarnate, I'm sure could run Thunder, Urshifu Rapid Strike, maybe is, having benefiting from water boosting. Anyway, looks
Mhm.
like that did not wind up going through. So, um, what do you think about this team? I bet you like the
Um,
low tiers on this team.
I'm trying to look and see what tier Politoed is in.
This Cavalier would be improved by
Politoed is
rain as
tier
well.
80. Tier
Tier
80.
80.
Yeah. So maybe a Scavalier can be switched with Politoed and it could be a true rain team. Enough with Hydration, Gudra, Thunderous, and Urshifu Rapid Strike. But I think it's good. I think it's good as it is. I think that Urshifu Rapid Strike has trouble with Pokemon that are faster than it, um, namely like special attackers. A lot of psychic types and the best fairy types are faster than it and hit on the special attacking side. So that could be a problem. So when I'm saying all this not as a criticism of our Urshifu Rapid Strike, which I think is going to be really good, but just thinking about what needs to be paired with Urshifu Rapid Strike in order to do well. And I think to get rid of some of those fairy and psychic um, problems, I think even pairing it with Metagross is really good, and a really bulky Spadef tank like Gudra, I think is really good. Having multiple poison type options in Salazzle and Roserade, I think can be very helpful too for the possible fairy spam. I would not look at this team and think, oh, I just gonna run specs Tapu Koko and click Dazzling Gleam. Um,
Right.
that's not going to happen with this team at all. Um, there's a lot of hazards in Metagross, Roserade, Diancie, Sandslash, Escavalier. Um,
Mhm.
and I do think the low tiers are good. Some of the low tiers I think are a little too passive for a team with Urshifu Rapid Strike, which I think wants to win on offense, like Escavalier and Type Null. Uh, I think those are good Pokemon in general. I don't know on a team like this, especially without wish support. But
Diancie get Wish? No.
I don't know. It only has 50
No, it just
HP.
gets Heal Bell.
It only has 50 HP, so it's not even though it's
Yeah,
bulky in its own right. That's due to its other defensive stats.
that's true.
I'm maybe Salazzle gets Wish. I don't know exactly what's going on there. I guess I could scroll down and find out.
No, it doesn't.
No, nothing does.
Yeah.
So when I look at this team, I see bulky offense. I see things like Roserade and Gudra and Metagross and Thundurus and Urshifu, which can usually live a hit and fire something back. Even Diancie, I think, lives a hit, fires something back. Escavalier lives a hit, fires something back. And so I think that this turn does better, or this team does better when the turns are lower. Um, I think that a 22 turn, 25 turn game, this team does really well. I start to get pretty scared if it's a 45 turn team with a water type that can't recover, with a flying type that can't recover, um, and with no wish support. Um,
Mhm.
but there's good ways to, I think, decent ways to at least to last longer. Having Pokemon that live a while is good. Also, setting up your own hazards and even like defog on a prankster Pokemon. Even though there's only what 2 or 3 ways to remove hazards: Thunderous, Sandslash, Vullaby. Um,
That's right.
I think that Thunderous can run run defog, and half the time you're trying to keep hazards anyway when you have things like Roserade. So I think they're hard pressed to defog. So don't bring defog. Just run spikes and Toxic spikes and stealth rocks and force them to do that work for you. So I think this team's good. Yeah, there's a little bit of, like I said, with Urshifu Rapid Strike. The way to counter it is to get faster than it. The two faster Pokemon are Salazzle and Thundurus. So maybe this team could benefit from another fast Pokemon.
I think the speed tiers are good. I
Yeah,
think also Urshifu Rapid Strike. I question whether or not to say this, but one thing that makes it less good than the other than Urshifu Single Strike is that its signature move is a physical multi-hitting attack, and so you can run Rocky Helmet, and it'll take chip damage for each of the 3 hits.
yeah.
Um, anyway, I see that as an extremely strong limitation on Urshifu Rapid Strike
In
because it's
Draft League.
very easy to, in Draft League in particular, it's very easy to put Rocky Helmet on anyone. And so, um, anyway, I think it's much easier to counter defensively than Urshifu
Yeah.
Single Strike. So, but I don't know. There's maybe a lot of other things it can do to
For
still
that
take
reason, I
advantage
think that
of.
it's more comparison should be closer to Keldeo, which has its own. It's faster. It hits on the special side, but it also has its drawbacks. The move pool is less than Urshifu Rapid Strike.
Yeah,
You can click Protect in front of it. So I think it's more like Keldeo than it is the other Urshifu.
that's fair, which is why it's in the same tier as Keldeo.
Yep.
So, um, yeah, I think I like the offense on this team. I think it's pretty variable. We've seen a couple teams so far where the offense was really concentrated in one or like Ben's team. We saw Melmetal and Latios obviously hitting extremely hard, but then a little bit of concentrated offense. We saw that
Right.
several times before that as well. So I like that the offense is spread around a little bit. That even though low tiers like Roserade and Salazzle, not really low tiers, but the mid tiers could hit
Mm-hmm.
really hard. Gudra, we've seen you could run Choice Band, you can run Choice Specs. It has a huge move pool. And even things like I believe Diancie gets Body Press now.
Oh yeah,
Sword
definitely
Stance
does.
Escavalier, Sword Stance Type Null. Anyway, these things are all going to be extremely helpful.
Right.
Um,
Swords and Sand Slash.
yep, yep. So that's something that I think is noteworthy about this team. And I think it's especially important because this is more of a draft league team and less of an OU team. And
Right.
so being creative with those mid tiers is going to be the most important factor in Ian's success. What's the purpose of drafting fewer top tiers and more mid tiers? Well, hopefully, having more mid tiers will give you more options to counter when
Right.
other teams have to bring 5 of the same 6 every time. Um, so I think, yeah, Gudra, Roserade, Salazzle, they're bringing them in different ways. And
Yeah.
I think that's going to be kind of key.
Yeah, I
So.
think I think this is a fun overall team. I think it will. I think there will be some matchups where Ian gets a little stumped. He goes, God, how do I deal with this thing, given my team? But I think Ian's gonna have a lot of fun with it. That's it on that one. Do you have anything else?
Think that's what I got. Dublin
Cool.
Dubwool, number 12.
Dun, dun, dun. So we kind of
Yeah.
got bulky offense, or no, we got like almost like stall core, Bulu, Pex, Chansey,
Yeah.
and then some premier attackers, maybe with Volcarona, Bulu as well.
Mhm.
What do you think about this team?
I I think it's fun. I think it's classic. That's what I'll say. I think it's very classic draft league. Things like Bulu Tox Peck have always gone great together. I think Bulu Volcarona goes really well together, just with the Volcarona really appreciates the passive recovery. Again, Chansey appreciates the passive recovery. There's kind of the classic. Magnezone also appreciates the passive recovery now with it being a teleport Pokemon, and of
Hmm.
course the nerf to Earthquake.
Right.
So, which though I will say that um, I often saw a Pokemon like Magnezone. Most Earthquakes are pretty strong, and so even sometimes having the damage from Earthquake it doesn't matter. Magnezone is still going to be O code. So you'd have to
Not O
like,
code. I mean, it has 115 defense, but it will get 2-hit KO'd, you know.
yeah, it depends what Pokemon it's like from Garchomp. Do you think Magnezone would live a hit from Garchomp? You
I
know,
can check that while you're talking.
yeah,
I think that's borderline.
yeah. Anyway, so I think this team has some good synergy. Again, it kind of looks like an OU team. Magnezone, Chansey, Toxapex, Bulu, Volcarona. Um, the low tiers, there's some interesting Pokemon. Pangoro has been pretty effective in our league before. I think it's tiered well at tier 80. I think previously we've had it tiered a little lower. Um, Sigilif has been used well in our league before. I've had Frostlass several times, and I just always want it to be better than it is. I think that the typing is useful, but and Will-O-Wisp, Spikes, Destiny Bond, Focus Sash, all those things are great, but I never can get it how I need it. And this team doesn't really benefit. I wouldn't say that this team really benefits from like a Spikes offense. This isn't like a Spikes offense team.
Hmm.
Um, that's my take, anyways. I
You
think
could definitely EV Magnezone to live a hit from Garchomp in the grassy terrain, and
really,
still have enough damage to Oko with Specs Analytic Flash Cannon after rocks. But you just switch out in front of Magnezone, in front of Garchomp. Please don't just stay in.
yeah, of course. I'm just saying. I guess I would.
Yeah. It's just
Okay, so that's good. As long as you're careful about your EVs, it
right.
can be useful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you think?
What I would say is like so in my other league, like the one that I said I was prone to knockoff with, it's because I had Latios and Chansey, which both got knockoff. But mainly what I found my problem with that team was that I was running a stall core in Chansey and Mega Sableye without a stall team. And what that ends up doing is it ends up meaning you can live a lot of things, but you can't really do anything. You have too much stall to attack with it, but not enough like and yeah, so and like it's just too passive. I felt like so I feel like I have some recency bias where I'm looking at Chansey Toxapex, and I'm like maybe this could work, but there's not really like the other parts of a stall team that you want. And then also, it almost feels like the team is built around Tapu Bulu, which is cool. That's fine.
Yeah.
It feels like the other Pokemon are really relying on that grassy terrain. Also, Tapu Bulu's weaknesses are covered pretty well, actually, by Toxapex, Chansey, Magnezone. Actually, very well with those three. But Tapu Bulu's also the fastest out of all the Pokemon I mentioned. And the only Pokemon faster than it on the team are base 100 Pokemon, besides the two tier 40s. And as I said during the discussion before, I'm not really a fan of trying to patch your speed tiers with your tier 20s, tier 40s, tier 60s. You're not gonna. You should bring Chansey over bringing something that's faster than Volcarona most of the time.
Yeah.
And so that's I would say that's the big hindrance of this team is that it's the offense isn't fast enough to make up for the passivity of Toxapex and Chansey. Does that sound like did I say real words?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Even if it was
Um,
like tier 180 um Zeraora.
mhm.
Like Zeraora as the top part of this, and then you can switch out Magnezone for like a 120 type Gardevoir. Holy
Mhm.
cow, this team to me looks really fun that way. Really fun that way. I think also previously I drafted Tapu Bulu on a team with Mega Camerupt and some other Pokemon that were weak to ground moves. And I just kind of found it like a big puzzle, like a problem that I introduced into the game, which is how do I make Tapu Bulu survive long enough? Not so that Tapu Bulu survives, but so that other things can survive. So, um, so those are, I guess, the problems with it. There are some of these low tier, like Pangoro, I think helps really well wall break for this team, and I think that there's enough setup options in Sigilyph, Kabutops, even Flygon, Bulu, and Volcarona that Aubrey can really easily, or not easily, but like easily in the sense of like it's not going to be like an if then statement, but if Chansey dies and you can just bring in Volcarona for free and click Quiver Dance on the switch out, you could just win a game like that. Or similarly, Chansey dies to Superpower, so you bring in Tapu Bulu and click Swords Dance, then you win. So there's a lot of setup options, but less things that just hit hard immediately.
Yeah. Which again is why Pangoro and again Magnezone I think can be a good breaker as well on the special side. So I think
Hazards are
Magnezone,
fine. Removal is
yeah,
fine too.
yeah, yeah, definitely not bad. You don't want to be running Defog on Volcarona, but that's okay. You're
It could
not
fit
gonna
on
have
Scarf
to.
Flygon though. I could see Scarf Flygon really kind of being the taking a lot or being a pick each week for this,
Yeah.
just because the amount of I think Flygon's actually a really good speed at a good speed tier for that with it getting U-turn.
Who likes wish support? Does is Bulu benefited by wish support? You don't have to run
Bulu
Citizen or
is,
anything.
Pangoro is, any sort of stall version of this team. If you're gonna hazard stack and just live forever, I think
Hmm.
things are gonna like wish support. Volcarona you can bring in on any, like you could pretty much just bring in wish teleport with Chansey and just ensure that Volcarona is at 100%.
Right.
Um,
Oh, even without heavy duty boots. Yeah.
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 So there's that. Those aspects of it.
Yeah, I
Cool.
think it's good. I think it's a yeah,
Yeah,
fun.
there's not like especially when you have Pokemon like Flygon, you want to worry about ice weaknesses, and there's not really like there's good ice switch-ins. Even to offensive Pokemon, like you don't always, if you think they're going to click an ice move, you don't have to go Toxapex when you can just use that as an opportunity to bring in Volcarona and set up. So
Right.
you kind of have to
Right.
like force the offensive characteristics of this team, but they're definitely there.
That's a good way to say it. You are not just gonna like get your offense, especially with it being slow. You're not just gonna
Mhm.
like have your offense get to do its thing. You have to make it happen.
Right.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. Next is the Galar United.
Chris.
Ah, yes.
Chris is.
Um,
This is a Chris team. There's like a lot of theoretical reasons why these Pokemon fit together. Um, I feel like Chris. I don't even want to call it overthinking because I think he has decent success with like it's not like I feel like I overthink synergy more than he does, but there's just something that feels very Chris about this team.
I think Chris used Zygarde this season that it was MVP. Got like, is that right? I'm pretty sure.
I don't think Zygarde has ever been MVP.
Oh, maybe it wasn't MVP. Maybe that was the
Oh, but it
season
should have been.
we
Or
snubbed it for something
and it
else.
won against Andy because it like crit during the setup war or some bullshit like that. Yeah, I know Chris definitely has had Zygarde before.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think Chris is back in his home turf, and I think that yeah, the again another OU team here: Zygarde, Kartana, Feeney, Nihilego, Blissey.
Yeah,
Nihilego and Kartana are fucking scary. They're
right,
both extremely scary. Kartana, especially base 181 attack. What? Like and beast boost.
right.
And it's fast. It's a 109. You can run it Scarf. You can run. You don't need to run it Scarf. You can run Swords Dance. it's high defense too. Like I know its HP is low, but 131
Right.
defense. Like if you're not hitting it with fire, like a special fire move, like this thing is going
Cartana
to be a
lives
lot.
Cartana lives more hits than people give it credit for.
Yeah, this is a very scary Pokemon. I think Chris is gonna. Well, I don't want to say week one because I played Chris week one, but I think he's gonna have some very
Yeah,
good
maybe not
success.
right out the gate. Let's hope
Almost,
for yeah. Let's hope
he's
for
gonna
maybe a poor
stumble right out the
start.
gate.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yes,
And then after that, just sweep through everyone with Cartana.
right. This to me looks so. I mean, this is a very Gen 7, right? Zygarde, Kartana, Fini, Nihilego. But anyway,
Yeah,
it feels it has like that Gen 7
yeah. If there
OU
were Z
feeling.
moves, oh my god, if there were
Oh
Z
my
moves on this
gosh.
team.
Mm,
Yeah, I think for me there are a couple things that I was like, oh, this would be so good if like I was like if Tapu Fini got flip turn like the leak said there it was gonna have. This team would be fucking incredible. You bring in Tapu Fini to live anything, and then you flip turn into either Cartana or Nihilego, and you win. Um, so it's like,
do
and
that
that's
with Blissey teleport though.
right. I
But
mean, well,
still.
is that the only pivot on the team? I guess Electabuzz and Persian.
Um,
Besides getting into the lowest of the tiers, that
yeah, that's
those are the
true.
pivot options, which I think is a little more difficult when Cartana has a SPDEF stat of 31 and Nihilego has a defensive stat of 47. Now Nihilego has great HP, so that's a little deceiving the defense. But yeah, I think that especially those two Ultra Beasts would do better if there was a little bit more Volt Turn aspects to the team.
I think you're definitely right.
But it's like, some of the criticisms of Zygarde is that it doesn't hit hard enough. Well, you have Cartana and Nihilego to do that sort of thing. And even
Mhm.
honestly Hitmonlee. I think Hitmonlee works really well with this team. There's kind of like three designated sweepers that you got to account for in Cartana, Nihilego, and Hitmonlee, and no one answer to any of like to any two of those.
Mhm.
Chris also likes having the once or twice a season winning on a stall team that's not really stall, but he ends up making it work as a stall, and I think Blissey can be a good core to that. Blissey Fini can be a really cool core to that strategy, and Zygarde.
Yeah, I
So I
think.
would say, I mean, there's the rockers in or hazard setters in Nihilego, Blissey, Bronzong. That's good enough. There's good removal with Fini, Cartana, Hitmonlee, even Drifblim.
Yep.
Yeah, I think for me it's like um is the only ground immunity Drifblim and Bronzong and no ground
Mm,
resist. Your grass type is Cartana.
yeah, that's true. Maybe.
Um I think though the for other than that, the weaknesses are covered pretty well. This is one of those teams that I'm rating lower because I think I need to see it proven. Because with things like Cartana and Nihilego, I want to see those that sort of pivot into it. Like this, I'm
Yeah.
gonna rate it lower than I think I would. I like this team. He could lead Zygarde, start setting up and hit moves, and then go Cartana, start setting up and hit moves, go Tapu Fini and end with Calm Mind. Like, he doesn't need to pivot, but I think the team gets better with those pivot options.
It's almost like Chansey offense, but Blissey
Yeah,
offense.
no, definitely. Yeah, it's Blissey, set up rocks, teleport into the counter, go
Mhm.
back to Blissey, Blissey Bronzong, and then the rest is just whatever you need to be good.
Yeah. I think it's yeah, I do like this team a lot. I think, of course, we just got to mention the unburdened users in Hitmonlee and Driftblim with the terrain. That's a useful trick a couple times. I think that
Right.
Bronzong and Kartana are great steel types together. I'm
Yeah.
excited about that.
And
I'm excited.
the low tiers aren't bad. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no tier 100 Pokemon, so there's a lot of points reserved for the top six. Bronzong is a good low tier for this team. Centiskorch, I think, is actually under tiered. It's almost like a meme that I keep bringing it up. You have an unburdened user, and then these are fine tier 20s. He'll bring them. He'll find a good reason to bring them each once.
About Centiskorch as being like actually a pretty good speed tier. Like base 65 is pretty good for a Pokemon that's tier 60. And
Yeah,
a fire type that's tier 60,
I mean,
like
was it Fire Lash that drops the defense of Pokemon?
and like, what are you running this against? Like defensive grass and steel types. Um,
Having a fire type that isn't weak to ground is decent. It has weird coverage moves like grass moves. So I think it does well as a decent lead to counter other leads that are either, I don't know, trying to set up hazards. So I think it's a good, and I mean, it brings in a fire immunity to a team with Kartana and Zygarde, which doesn't want to get burned. So I'm cool with
yeah.
Centiskorch here, and
It's
and it
good.
lives. I mean, HP of 100. This is almost similar to Excadrill in the sense that like your HP is doing so much that your stats below that don't need to be that high. But I mean, 65-90 is still great.
Yeah. Something that I always think about with 100 HP is it lets you set up a sub and your sub can't be broken by seismic
Seismic
toss.
toss. Yep.
Yep.
Or what's the ghost one? That's like that.
Oh,
Yeah,
uh,
there's
yeah,
another move that yeah does a quarter of your level, which for us means 100 damage. So yeah,
yeah. So that is always I always like immediately think about that with Pokemon. It gives them some utility, especially with if you have a setup move like
right.
Coil, which Scorch has. So anyway,
There's gonna be teams gonna be fucking annoying if does Nihilego get Thunderwave?
I think
It
so.
might. It gets a weird move, but Zygarde with Glare, Nihilego with Thunderwave, Blissey with Thunderwave. This team's gonna be fucking annoying. To just like get a whole bunch of status, and even if you try to status Chris, he's just gonna click Heal Bell with Blissey.
It does get Thunderwave.
I mean, the one thing is that he has Feeny, so he's gotta be in control of when Misty Surge is up, Misty Terrain is up.
Yeah, you're not gonna be. It makes it harder to run Toxic Spikes on
But like
Nihilego.
you could run attack boosting Kartana if you can Thunder Wave whatever thing is faster than it. So
Yeah.
I promise you I'm rating this team low, and he's gonna beat me. It's just gonna happen. The classic
It's
revenge of the bad review is to just beat the
yes.
person that reviewed you
Just
poorly.
just win. Speaking of bad reviews,
Dun dun dun
um,
dun 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 dun.
ta-da! I can't see your screen. Did you move over to the next team?
Not yet. No, I'm kidding. I did.
Okay. Oh yeah, yeah. It's so Steeville Weaviles. I've mentioned already a couple times about how I'm down on weather this season. And so this team eventually got rated low, partially because it went completely all in on weather. So out of 11 Pokemon, I would consider nine of them, maybe eight, depending on if you count me or not, as specifically drafted for the weather team.
Mm.
Ferrothorin's obviously staple on weather teams. Raikou gets much better when you can bring Thunder. Barraskewda, Kingdra, Pelipper, Ludicolo, Dreadnought, Omastar. So 5 weather abusers and a rain setter. Um, to me, that's a little bit overkill. Um, and maybe for reasons that I've already talked about, where I think weather in OU is less good when you can prep for it, and we
Mm-hmm.
have very OU like teams um, this season, which is maybe not something. It's not something that I knew going into the draft, and I wouldn't have expected Andy to know that going into the draft either. But looking at it afterwards, I think that this team, when compared to the rest of the league, I think it'll have a difficult time. Um, and I'm gonna say this, and then Andy's gonna beat me doing that. I'm going to say that he can't do this, and then he's going to beat me doing it. But
Right.
I don't think you would run Pelipper and five rain abusers, five swift swim users.
What are the rain abusers? It's
So it's Barraskewda on the physical side, which is
yeah.
fast even before it. Kingdra, which is great because it gets Hurricane this season.
Mm-hmm.
Ludicolo, Water Grass, which is it gets that's just
With
some
ice beam coverage, yeah.
yeah. Dreadnought and Omastar. So
Yeah.
Ludicolo is special, Kingdra is special,
And you haven't
Barraskewda is
even
physical.
added in the Pokemon that are generally considered good in rain, which would be like on his team Raikou and Ferrothorn.
Right. So I think that every week Andy should bring Ferrothorn, Raikou, Pelipper, Mew. He almost can't run. He can't not run Rain. He didn't draft 6 Pokemon that will be good together. Like, I would
Outside
not
of rain.
run outside of Rain. I don't
Palossand,
think.
Liepard,
Mew,
Barraskewda, Raikou,
Ferrothorn,
Ferrothorn,
Raikou.
Mew.
Yeah, I don't think. I don't think it exists. I think Andy
Run that
has to
against
bring.
Andy. Run that against Adam and beat him.
Do it. Or the other thing you could do is the thing that I'm going to say you shouldn't, which is run, yeah, 6 water types against me, Pelipper, and 5 Swift
Please
Swim
run 6
users.
water types against my Rillaboom. That'd be nice.
Just to me,
Oh, you have
like,
Thwacky.
why would you, yeah.
Oh yeah, Thwacky's even
Uh,
better because it's cheaper.
yeah, to me, especially some of these. So you got there are 2 water rock types. I guess they both get Shell Smash. Dreadnought
Yeah.
gets Shell Smash, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know. I don't think
maybe
so.
Andy's thinking about that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm down on this team for that reason. I think there's too much
Yeah.
overlap. It in a way. I say that, but like I don't even
Yeah.
think it's possible to bring all of them.
Right. And so like the con about this is there is no dragon type or a fairy type, which aren't like you don't need a dragon
Indra.
type to have a good team. Oh yeah, there is. There's no fairy type.
Mhm.
Which like you don't need necessarily a fairy type to draft a good team, but it does provide dragon type immunity, and a lot of teams drafted a good dragon type. So there's something there to that. I'm with you that I think that the drafting so much overlap comes at the cost of being or having less of a wide reach.
Mhm.
For me, I'm okay with most of that. It's like when you use your low tiers anyway. With my I guess biggest criticism is like why draft a rain team without the best Pokemon that could be included in the rain team? And in my head, those seem like it's like Zapdos, Tornadus, Tapu Koko. If it was National Dex, Mega Swampert. And so I think that without any, I think Raikou's a decent alternative. I think Mew's a decent alternative, but without one of the sort of premier rain users worth those points, I would say just change your plans. Draft something else. So yeah, that would be my criticism. I do think though it's like I said this in the draft discussion, which I'm glad that everyone's talking in it. It does mean that some points are buried. So I'll just say it. Here is like the criticism is also a strength because if your one check to all of these water types is Seismitoad or is Tapu Fini, all Andy has and that's your thing to counter rain. If Andy can find a way to beat your one thing that can counter rain, then he'll just overwhelm you with the water moves. Tapu Fini goes down because of some weird ass Mew set, or because Raikou is able to get the damage off in some sort of positioning war. Then he just wins with Weather Ball on everything. And now you don't have anything for it. So it's sort of like a high risk, high reward.
Hmm.
I don't think it's high risk, low reward, which may be almost what you're saying, but not quite. I think it's high risk, high reward.
And I want to be clear that I think that Andy will use this team well and win a lot of games.
Yeah, he's gonna go
You
10 and
know,
0, and it's gonna be our bottom tier.
yeah. Part of why we don't do a post analysis after the season is because yes, we learn things by watching the coaches play, but we're trying to just grade the teams, not the coaches. And so
Right.
actually a coach who takes a team that we think isn't good and they do well with it, like that doesn't
It
prove
doesn't
that it's a
prove you
good team.
wrong. Yeah. For if
Exactly. And so
yeah
it wouldn't do us any good to like come back on and say like, haha,
yeah
we were so right, or haha, and try and use evidence from the season. Like I don't think it works very well. It would mostly
yeah
just be feelings of people saying like, I felt like it was hard to prep for this
yeah.
team, or um
It would almost feel like the second to last episode of a reality TV show where we get on and we like review the season and like kind of like add drama and narrative to it. But it wouldn't be like an analysis of like, are these teams good? It would be like, oh, Andy
right.
came on and proved us all wrong, and that Andy, you know what I mean? It'd be more it'd be more drama and like a sort of like hype than it would be like, I feel like what hopefully we're trying to do right now.
Here's the thing. Maybe let me sum this up in a different way. Um, I think that this team would be equally as effective with 8 Pokemon drafted as it is with 11 Pokemon.
Okay,
And
that's fair.
so Andy can absolutely win in Draft League with 8 Pokemon on his team, facing off against 11 Pokemon teams. But what's the utility? Because he has those other 3 picks, he should be trying to get some utility out of them. And by that I
Right,
mean basically like uh Omastar, Dreadnought, Ludicolo. I would consider those as like difficult brings. And so
right.
what is uh what is the purpose? And so for example, one of the great things about Mew on this team is that it can um because it's so many water types, Mew can kind of um yeah, like you said, like break you can have some weird ass Mew set that breaks through their one
Mm-hmm.
counter. But I think that Mew has too much heavy lifting to do because the other options are so limited because it's
Mm-hmm.
if you had used those other 3 to help support Mew, maybe, or help ease Mew's burden a little bit by, um, Mew can't do 3 things at once.
Right,
And there might be a week that it has to because there's no good knockoff user. You
right.
have um, Lipard. But anyway, that's kind of my summary.
An example that I was thinking about is like Omastar outside of Swift Swim is generally like a good lead. It leads with hazards and then dies turn 2 or 3 or 4 on like a hyper offense thing. Is there anything that costs 60 points that could have been used other than that? Maybe Alchemy would at least provide some difference, and that's a Pokemon that I hate. Or if you wanted that sort of like hyper offense effect because you're running rain, maybe Crustle would be a decent start. You know, and so there's maybe ways to do the same like for those low tiers where you do actually get a little bit more versatility out of something that you're only going to bring once or twice. Pincurchin, you can run, yeah, at least get up a Toxic Spike and set up electric terrain for your Raikou. You know, so anyway, we hate this team. We love you. You're gonna fucking kill it, and we're
Yeah.
gonna. I'm gonna cringe every time someone stays in with their one thing that stops the dominoes, and then that dies, and then the dominoes just all drop. So
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds about right.
that's how Andy works. Overall, 28-6 with a plus 81 differential. Fuck you,
That's
Andy. I'm kidding.
absolutely insane.
He's only lost 6 times in the last 3 seasons.
Oh my
Oh my
gosh.
god.
Andy, is this going to be the season where you're both the champion? and the regular season, you come in first in the regular season. It
Right.
has not happened yet in how many times? What? I guess 13
13
seasons.
seasons. Yeah, we've never had somebody go undefeated and win the playoffs ever. I think our first undefeated season would it have been? We've only had two. It's either was Andy last season. I feel like there might have been a Colin time too, where he went undefeated. I don't know,
Sounds right.
but
Not me. I have not ever gone undefeated.
man, as Andy, I'm sure like stays up thinking about how dominant he is, but he's never just secured that coveted undefeated shit.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go on to Washington
Okay,
Hippopotas,
we're getting.
which is actually
It's
the
been
Washington Pokemon team.
Pokemon team.
Sorry that in the
That's a
tier
fun
list.
name change.
Oh yeah, I love it. It's perfect. It's like lore wise, it fits perfectly.
Yeah.
I apologize on the tier list. It's using your old logo. But new team who dis. It is the Washington Pokemon team. First round overall pick Scizor, which was pretty interesting for first round, going down to dipping down to the 160s. Scissor Suicune.
Consider Scizor one of the top half of in the top half of the 160s either.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
definitely belongs there, but I don't know if it's in the same with Tapu Fini, Tapu Bulu in the
Sure.
same tier.
It's
Latias.
interesting. This team has like a lot of Pokemon that I feel like maybe Scizor isn't the example of that, but I think a lot of Pokemon on this team are in the top half of the tier that they're drafted in. Arcanine,
That's
Crocodile,
interesting.
Haxorus,
Haxorus. Yeah,
Suicune.
yeah. Suicune. Oh my God.
So it's
Suicune.
like there's some cheap there's some good Pokemon that are cheap on this team.
Yeah, I think this team looks so much like it's just like it feels very classic draft
Yeah.
league to me. The
And
Arcanine
and
Crocodile.
almost like exactly UU though. If we're gonna use those like
Oh,
OU,
interesting.
it's
Yeah.
like this is a UU team. Scizor, Suicune, Haxorus, Arcanine, Crocodile, and then
Yeah.
Crobat,
That's
Jolteon, any of that. It's almost
that's
exactly
interesting.
UU. And in
Wow.
maybe in some more synergy than some of the teams that we've quote unquote called OU. Like I think that like even just those top five 120s and tier 120s and up on his team are just like amazing Pokemon. Some of the best Pokemon in the draft league, some of the best Pokemon in their tiers. You get pretty much everything you need, but like cleric support, good like decent recovery and hazard removal. But
Get
offensively,
hazard removal and recovery with Scizor.
right? It does. It does. It's just
Yeah,
limiting Scissor's
that's true.
versatility.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, it's like that is bulky offense. That is every turn you're living a hit and hurting something really bad. Maybe you're not. Besides Haxorus, maybe you're not OHKOing anything without setting up. But like the fact that you have Moxie Boost with Crocodile, Haxorus gets Scale Shot now, and Dragon Dance, and Swords Dance. Suicune is always just Calm Mind sets can be really annoying, and Scissor late game with Swords Dance and priority moves. Like there are so many win conditions that are implied that he can work around with those top five picks. And I think the bottom picks are all good. I mean, I don't know
I
anything about
agree.
I don't know about Dubwool or I know about Roselia. I don't know why he would pick up or use Roselia except if he specifically wanted one toxic spike, one spike, and then to die, which is fine. That's a way to win for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Double has its own utility. I'm sure he with a like fluffy cotton guard set, fluffy
Right.
cotton guard body press.
His team
Um,
isn't weak to Ghost really at all. I mean, he doesn't have a psychic type. He doesn't have a ghost type. Um, I guess he
hmm,
has psychic type and Uxie. But
yeah,
Double's even bulletproof is a pretty good focus blast and shadow ball counter.
mhm, mhm.
So
Yeah. I think what did I say about this team? Yeah. I think you're right. The synergy is great. The defensive synergy is great. The speed tiers. Oh, I want to talk about speed. We actually have not talked about speed tiers very much today.
Right.
But I think that the speed tiers in this draft are a little bit top heavy for my taste.
Really?
Um, where, well, okay, hold on. That's what I wrote. Is that really what I mean? Uh,
I just don't think
I
they're that good. Some teams are slow. Other teams have a lot of fast things at low tiers. Um, yeah.
okay. Look, so between it has somebody at 97, 95, 92, actually 95 again, 88, 85.
Yeah, but like we're not going to be bringing. You're not bringing speed on Uxie most of the time. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
it's like the
I don't
actual
know.
things that the actual things that you would run speed on in the '90s are what Haxorus, Crocodile. Is that it? Arcanine, maybe. Suicune, maybe. So hey, we
I don't
might have
know
a different. We
what
might have a
it's gonna
different.
be.
We might have a difference of opinion. I think that means that sometimes he can run fast Arcanine, and other times he's very free to not run any speed on Arcanine.
I think I don't know what I was. I had a note. I said it out loud. I don't know what I was going for.
No, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. I mean, there's not. I
um,
mean, on the speed tier side, it's like it is 97 Haxorus, no 100s, and then Jolteon Crobat, which aren't the best fast. They're good. It's good. It's a good like fill in for speed. Both of those are, but they're not like premier. They don't. They're not essential on his team. He almost has to compromise on something else in order to bring speed. It's not like there is something like even Mienshao, which would get him
right.
above one thing above 100. Like yeah, there's nothing like in the 105 110 range, for sure. And I think that's maybe a problem on his team.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I think there is good pivot options. You have
Oh yeah,
Arcanine, Scizor, Crobat, Jolteon. Uxie is great. I'm so glad we have Uxie back. What a good low tier.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
Wish
yeah,
support is very prevalent. I think this team is going to be good for Mister Three Names Junior because there are a lot of things that he likes to do. Um, whether it is the wish support or it is bringing like pretty creative sets with the with his sort of mid tier Pokemon. I think that's a characteristic of Brian's playstyle. I think he's going to be more willing to bring like a Moxie boosting Crocodile than I ever would. I'm pretty much like Intimidate's the only ability on Crocodile, and I think that he's going to be running like good Scarf sets on Crocodile. I could see him do something weird like a Scarf Uxie to get a fast U-turn off. Like he'll find some weird creative ways to make this team fun.
Oh, Brian, please bring Anger Point this season.
What
I'm
does
not
Anger
going to
Point
say
do
it.
again?
It's if you get crit, it raises your attack to max to +4 to
Plus
+6.
6.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not going to say
Okay.
any more than that, but please bring it this season. There's some good utility there now.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, great. Oh, one thing I do want to say is that uh, I have written down that this team is going to be relying offensively on Scizor in a lot of ways, and so it's a little bit disappointing that
Hmm.
Scizor is the best defogger on the team. Maybe that's not true. Maybe the bulky offense nature means that the load is spread around a little
Right.
bit, but
That could be true
I don't
though.
know. It's also this team is pretty heavy on the physical offensive side. There's not a whole lot of special
Right.
options.
You really need to set up with Suicune for it to hit hard and Arcanine. I like special Arcanine, but it's still running Scorching Sands. These other like smaller, like not scary moves on it.
Right.
So
What? Yeah.
bring Nasty
Specs
Plot Crobat.
Jolteon
Bring
is the
Nasty
best.
Plot Crobat.
Nice. Yeah. That'll get you there.
How is Roselia's special attack still 100? That's
It's
probably
a
a strong. That's probably a strong Leaf Storm if it gets it. I don't know if that's a move that it gets
yeah.
after it evolves, but holy nuts, that's a
That's
strong move.
that's your second highest special attacker, Brian, is Roselia.
Rude.
Nice.
You don't have to say it out loud. That's a little mean. I'm
Oh.
kidding. But yeah, kind of to wrap up on this, I think there's some cool defense. Arcanine Crocodile, Suicune, Scizor. That just defensive. That's those are all three Pokemon or four Pokemon that I would freaking love to have, and I think that that actually I know Haxorus was sort of late in the draft for you. I think round 5. But I think that is a really good tier 140 pick, and it almost looks like this team is set up to. I would say if there are a couple more fast Pokemon, then it almost looks like you built a team around that Pokemon, just because of how well you handle Fairy types, which do well how well you handle Ice types. So I think this might be the season for the Haxorus.
Yeah, I think yeah, just to sum up for me, I think yeah, I think this is a great team. I think it's a very draft league team. I think there's a lot of synergy, and I'm excited to see it used.
Defensive Crobat. It has almost
Oh
the
my
exact same
gosh,
defensive line as Clefable. It has good typing. Don't at me. I love that
so
Pokemon.
good, so good.
0 speed, max HP Crobat is the wave. Maybe not when you don't have other fast Pokemon, but that's
Yeah, that's
my
true.
hottest take is I love that Pokemon.
And
All
does
right,
zero speed Crobat nestle in that 105 range?
let's see
So
here.
like, um, you know, 139 speed.
How do these work? What is this? What does this 121 to 200 thing mean? Oh, that's at the
Oh,
50s. Oh, this is only okay. Level 50s, level 100s. I don't know
yeah,
what
yeah,
zero speed Crobat hits, but it hits my heart.
yeah.
We do have the last coach, the wheel pick.
Yes.
Maybe you don't have the. Maybe you can't prep for anything, but one thing you can prepare for is getting exactly two Pokemon that work really well together, and that
Right.
is the benefit of being the last pick in a draft. Um, And you know, when our team, when we have 16 people drafting, then that actually makes the 16th overall pick even better than the, I don't know, X minus 2, like the 14 overall pick.
Yeah.
So, what was your, I think beforehand you were kind of eyeing Heatran, even before you knew where you were in the draft. But what was your thought
Yeah.
process in Landorus Heatran?
So, okay. So um, I wanted to pick fun Pokemon, kind of like you. I wanted to pick fun Pokemon. I wasn't necessarily set. I actually didn't want any of the tier 200 Pokemon. I'm glad I wasn't one of the top 5 people because I
Picking
didn't want to
Heatran
use.
round or third overall.
Yeah, I would have picked Galarian Darmanitan if I was up higher.
Yeah.
But I I just didn't. I just wasn't interested. I've used Celesteela before. I kind of know that I would not be very good at making Dragapult shine. Um,
Hmm.
just something about too much pressure on the star to be the most versatile and all the offense. I don't know. I maybe would have picked Torrentee.
Hmm.
Um, but anyway, so I have always thought Heatran was very cool. I've never drafted it in a team. And I've had Landorus before. So yeah, I was thinking about Heatran. I was thinking about who would be fun to use. It was kind of like Galarian Darmanitan, Heatran would be very fun. Um, and honestly, I didn't spend very much time before the draft thinking about it at all. I didn't spend very much time like playing OU or anything. And so I just like about like 2/3 of the way through the first round, I looked at who was left and I was like, okay, I'm gonna pick Heatran. And I just like knew if I was gonna get Heatran that Lando had to be the other one. Um,
Right.
it's like peanut butter and jelly, you know?
Yeah.
That's how I feel. So I've had Landorus before, and I think I had it on a team with Mandibuzz and Mamoswine, and it was pretty early. It was maybe like season 6, and I had this theory that I wanted to free up Landorus to do lots of things, and so I to do whatever I wanted. And so I drafted a bunch of Pokemon that could do exactly the same thing as Landorus, so that it was free to do anything. But then it I did it exactly the wrong way, where
Really,
they just like
where
complete.
you're like, oh, I want a stealth rocker, but Landorus is definitely the best stealth rocker I have. So why would I use any of these other stealth rockers that I drafted in order to free up Landorus?
Exactly. Or yeah, in some way, in other matches, Landorus was like crowded out. Where I was like, it's like I actually don't need this to do anything. Anyway,
Yeah,
it was just weird.
yeah.
Um, so I'm excited to have Heatran and Landorus together. I think they're good. Obviously, the quad weaknesses cover each other extremely well. They're both weak to water, so try to patch it up with Primarina and Heliolisk is nice with the dry skin. So um, I
Adam,
just yeah.
this is the exact, almost the. I don't think you could have tried to be the exact opposite of top heavy as you did. You have like
Think so?
one of every tier except 3 tier 100s.
Is that right? Oh my gosh. And
20,
no tier
40, 60,
200.
80, 100, 100, 100, 120, 140, 160, 180. I don't think you planned on doing
I
that,
did not.
but that feels so calculated, and I hope it works out for you.
Is wild.
It's
I
like
am thrilled.
the crazy thing about that is just the type synergy that's happening here. Even Heatran Buzzwole, Heatran being such a good specially defensive Pokemon. I mean, I know its defense and Spadef are the same, but I generally see it more, especially because it can like switch into flamethrowers and dazzling gleams and moonblasts, which are a lot more common than the physical sides of those same types. Heatran is like sort of a Spadef Pokemon, and its sort of relationship to Buzzwole, where Buzzwole resists. It always bothers me that Bug resists ground. But it leads to a good effect here where Heatran and Buzzwole work really well together. And Primarina work really well together. That's a very, very fun bulky offensive core in those top 4 Pokemon if I include Landorus. I'm gonna
Yeah.
actually scroll. I'm gonna scroll down and see if there's any sort of weaknesses that aren't covered by anything else, and there's none. The closest thing you have is a water weakness.
Yeah. It's
Um,
a little bit there. And Buzzwole doesn't really want to get burned. So maybe there's a
yeah, but yeah, so there's a little bit of like a water weak, like you might be weak to specifically Scald, because then Sarina and Regidrago become more limited and Thwacky become more limited. But like overall though, that's a really, for the amount of types that you have 8 types in the first 4 Pokemon. That's really impressive. And it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem forced. It's not like you're trying to find a Dragon Fairy Steel Core and a Fire Water Grass Core in 3 Pokemon. And so I really like that. I think that you have some cool pivoting options. I feel like are more than half of your Pokemon pivot options.
It's so
Landorus,
cool. I actually
Primarina,
didn't realize that
Heliolisk,
Marina.
Sarina, Thwacky, and Slowbro gets a Regenerator. You have 6 Pokemon that all generally have either a pivoting move or heal themselves when you switch them out.
Yeah, I actually didn't even realize that Primarina learned Flip Turn when I picked it, and I was very excited to.
Right.
I think I was checking, and I was accidentally on the Sun and Moon tab in Smogon when I looked at it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm very thrilled. I think the thing that I'm most excited about is just that each of these Pokemon are so fun. My top 5, maybe. I think
Heliolisk is fun.
Helios. I've never
All
used it
right.
before. I've been
All right.
excited. I think every time I face it's hard,
That's true.
um, because it gets dry skin and it gets surf, and that there are not that many electric types that get surf, and I think it
That's
winds
true.
up being surprisingly
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah,
effective.
your electric switch in is usually your ground type.
Mhm. So anyway, I think that's good. Primarina I've never used before in Draft League, and I really have been excited about. Buzzwole I've never used before in Draft League, and I think is amazing.
right.
So I Galarian Slowbro I think is great. Who
Right.
did I say? Okay, I was going to prove people wrong about Galarian Slowbro and
Regidrago.
Regidrago. Nobody was really saying bad
Kind of
things
maybe
about Red.
Heatran. Maybe you were like Heatran is the best 160.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
What I like about your team is that um a lot like your base attacking stats are like 145 and 139 and 120. And then your special attacking is like 130, 126. These are high enough that, and they're on Pokemon that are generally considered defensive Pokemon, that they're hitting very hard without any investment. Sometimes you might even find out with your specific EV sets that that you can run like modest nature Heatran without any special attack investment, and that's still optimal. Just because getting you that 10% in your special attack puts it just over the edge to do the damage you need it to do without taking any EVs to do so. So that's what I really like about your top four. I kind of dreamed about having Buzzwole before I drafted the Pokemon that I ended up drafting, and I have like 3 or 4 different Heat Buzzwole sets that I want to throw your way because I think
But yeah,
that Pokemon could be really really cool with almost an 80 speed, and you're able to either boost your defense or your attack, and I had it in another league, and half the time I ran Assault Vest on it, and it just lived everything, and I Drain Punched my health back. So, or Leech Life, it gets both of those. So, you can just
I
live forever.
still, I still have the only time I have interacted with Buzzwole in our draft league was when Andy Taylor had it one season, the season that I drafted Celesteela, and
Oh yeah,
he ran Z Poison Jab and Thunder Punch to beat my Sylveon and Celesteela.
Celesteela,
Anyway,
right?
there was my hope of an undefeated season. So
Oh yep. All because of
sad,
this.
but
All because of this Planet Fitness mosquito. So
yeah, so
I think it's cool. I think that where this normally a team that's this bulky you would want wish support on it, but actually I think which technically you have with Clefairy. Um, I
Clefairy
think
is not terrible.
I know it
It's
isn't. I think it's
yeah,
decent.
but you're right.
Even if you just want it to be your stealth rocker, so that Heatran and Lando don't have to be cool. Um,
Right.
but I think in general, like even down to your like tier 80 for Slowbro is way too low. That is criminal.
That's what
You
I said.
should,
I said it's the best tier 80, and
yeah,
that was I had to prove that one.
yeah, that's so good. So you're in a good situation where like Slowbro can regenerate and you can and Buzzwole can roost. And generally, those aren't like what you're thinking of as being your Pokemon with staying power. Um, but like, I mean, your flying type can't roost.
Right.
But and your fairy type can't recover in any sort of way. Your primary fairy type. Um, but I think that you're gonna have fun, and I think you're gonna move these. Like we have enough pivot options that as long as you keep hazards off of your side, you're just gonna be able to pick and choose how you want to win.
Yeah. I think also that this team got a lot better when I drafted Thwacky.
That's
Um,
so funny, isn't it?
yeah, like it gives me priority that I didn't have before. It patches up, Heatran a little bit. It like gives Heatran recovery.
Right,
And it gives Primarina recovery,
right.
and Tsarina. And actually, it probably works well with Galarian Slowbro too. So anyway,
Does Primarina get Calm Mind?
it's there's somebody earlier that I said got Calm Mind that did. Um,
Yeah.
it does.
Regardless,
Yes.
yeah. Regardless, I think that especially with Pokemon that have Calm Mind, I think that grassy terrain is a fun terrain because your grassy seed boosts your defense. So like you can run a Grassy Seed Primarina and Calm Mind, and you're just gonna now you're boosting your special attacks, special defense, and you have +1 defense, so you can just do it for longer. So
Great. Cool.
do that
Well,
once.
should we
Don't do it
go to
against
our
me.
tier list? I think, how long have we been
Yeah.
recording? Is this almost 4 hours?
3 hours and 23 minutes. 3 hours
Oh
and
my
24
God.
minutes as of exactly now.
Oh my gosh. You guys are welcome for some very long, drawn out content. It's probably less densely good than before, but
Right.
we can all use some extra content nowadays.
Exactly. Okay, I'm just gonna zoom in on these two things, and you can't see it, but I just have both my draft on the left and your draft on the right.
Okay. Yeah. So,
All right. So
okay.
one thing that I'll say when you look at both of these is that neither of us have an S tier, and that I think is because even if each team has a busted Pokemon on it, in the past I've gone like, oh wow, we're every team has done so good to patch up its weaknesses. Everyone's doing so great. And maybe it's because I wanted to believe that no team was busted, but I actually think that every team had something that they could improve upon. So, it kind of in both of our assessments, we've sort of established just a baseline that there's no S tiers.
Mhm.
And then like A, B, C, D. When I was originally writing out my things, I would just put a grade on it, and most of it was like A minus, B plus, B. I think my lowest grade was like a B. This is just like there's no. Just think first tier, second tier, third tier, fourth tier. Don't think
Mhm.
of it as like if you're in the fourth tier, it means that it's a D, and you could think about how that's not a passing grade or whatever. Don't worry about that. This is just trying
Yeah.
to find listing 4 tiers.
We could have said A plus
Yeah, we could
A
have an A
minus.
plus A minus B, and then the bottom tier is B.
Yeah.
So think more
Yeah.
about what we've talked about and less about the grade listed to the left of wherever your team logo or Pokemon icon is.
The other thing
So,
about this, at least for me, they are not ranked in within the tier, they're not ranked in order. Um,
okay.
maybe maybe there's an approximate order, but like
Oh,
for
I should say
example,
mine real quick. Mine's on this right side. I think I said an accident that mine is on the left. Adams is over here on the left. Mine is
okay,
over on the right, and I'm not going to do any post editing to like reveal that any further.
no,
Maybe I'm going to
that's
put. Okay, I'll put my name down here. Okay, there we go.
nice. Okay, that's good. Um, yeah, I think that again, we've struggled with this for the last um what is this, the fourth draft that we've done since Gen 8 came out? Is that right? Or the third?
This is our
Yeah, it's
third.
the fourth because we've been using the website. This is the fourth time we've used the website.
Yeah.
So every single time it's been a completely new meta, or meaning that there's like new Pokemon that have been added, and that makes it extremely difficult. I guess I won't speak for Kyle. It makes it extremely difficult for me to evaluate which teams are going to be good and which teams are going to be bad. Like,
Right.
for example, I mentioned throughout the episode that I have a hunch that weather is going to be less good this season. That's just my hunch. So a lot of the weather teams um, are rated more like towards the lower
Yeah. I mean, you
end.
don't have a weather team in the top 10.
Right.
I don't think you
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
It was surprising to me when I did this and then I went back and looked and I was like, wow, all the weather teams I rated very low. Um, yeah, that's kind of based on anyway, it's
Oh,
based on my
literally
hunch
your
and it's
bottom three. Literally your D tier is weather. All of them are in
yeah,
your bottom tier.
yeah. Um, yep. So sorry, I guess. Prove me wrong.
Yeah, I mean, if anything,
Um,
that just shows the bias that we each have. Like this isn't
right,
objective in any sense, showing that
right.
he's not a believer in weather for draft league.
Yeah, who has shown it in our league?
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
know that there are other leagues that aren't ours, but I can't point to a successful weather team.
Yeah, I think
Can I?
that I
I
think
don't know.
I think
Have you?
that I think that weather can be good. It's like not all coaches are good with the same teams. So a new coach might not be. I might not recommend a Pokemon like Mew to the newest coach because of how versatile it is, and it doesn't really have a strong attack or special attack. It's all base 100s across the board, so it's not like it's like. It can be pretty difficult for someone new to look at a Pokemon that versatile and find out what is the best set. So I think for new coaches, I think that weather could be a way to like get into draft league and to like learn a new style and take some of that, take some of those like restrictions and use it to help you learn a little bit. So
Yeah.
I'm not. I think it's more like coach dependent. But I do agree with you that it has its limitations, and you'll see that in some of my ratings as well.
Mhm. In general, let's see, what else do I have to talk about for the ratings? I found, sorry, it takes me a second to flip through the different teams. I believe, if I'm remembering right, I found Brian, Tim, and Ben's team to be a little bit um,
Brian
like
Tim
the,
being the Washington and Ben's team being the
yeah, oh yeah,
Magicarp
yeah. Sorry, yeah, the Magikarp and the Washington
Pokemon team.
Pokemon team. I think I found their teams to be a little bit not offensive enough. Where like
To
the
merit the
offense,
top half.
yeah, or it's just yeah, too concentrated. Maybe there's like two, like Ben has Melmetal and Latios. It's like
Sure.
two really incredible offensive Pokemon. I think I felt a little bit similarly. Maybe I feel different now about the
Hmm.
Washington Pokemon team. Maybe I think they're a little more spread out. But I sort of felt like Scizor and Haxorus was really where the offense was.
Right.
And aside from that, it's kind of bulky and pivoty. So I think those teams I felt like were a little bit similar. Your team, I felt like it just had some pretty uh, just lacking in synergy, and it was missing the hazards and
That's rude.
hazard removal that it really wanted.
That's rude.
Um,
No, I'm kidding.
the Mareeps, I felt like, let's see, in general, I thought the top tiers were amazing and the low. Oh yeah, I wasn't so hot on the sun abusers without a sunsetter.
Yeah.
Um, oh yeah, that was the other one that was kind of like almost like a weather team. Let's
Right.
see, what about the double and that, sorry, I'm just gonna quickly go through
Yeah.
and then maybe you can do too.
So while yeah, you keep going then.
Oh, yeah, Dunsparce. Um, I think I was not so hot on the low tiers. And I think I also felt similarly to Ben and or to the Magikarp and the Washington Pokemon team, where the offensive presence is really concentrated in Urshifu and Gengar.
Right.
And there's going to need to be some work in order to make the rest of the team win offensively, especially
Hmm.
in with this kind of like OU esque team where a lot of people have really strong defenses.
Cool.
Let's see, the Dublin Dubwool. What did I say about this? I think when we looked at it together, I like it a little more than when I rated it initially. I
Yeah.
think it is,
I think same about me.
yeah, I think it is built around Bulu. I was kind of questioning whether Magnezone was worth the points. But I think it is
Hmm.
on this team. I was thinking like, ah, it's good because magnet pull, but you have Volcarona, so why do you need magnet pull?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's good as a pivot. It's good as, you know, that special attack is
Sure.
extremely helpful for this team. So maybe it's lacking in offense. Like you were saying, it's the stall core without
Yeah.
maybe not quite the right amount of support. Let's see.
And then the other two, you just don't believe in the weather.
Yeah, I don't totally believe in the weather. That's right.
Um.
Um,
So what your top three though? What are
oh yeah,
your
my top. So I have Braviaries, Beartics, Sharpedo.
Yeah.
Braviarys, I love the team. Um, I think most of these teams I liked the top tiers and I like the low tiers. I like the way they're integrated together.
Hmm.
Um, Even though, like, for example, the Braviaries are pretty top heavy with um, Galar and Darmanitan. They have, let's see, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven Pokemon at tier 100 or above. I just felt like it was well integrated and there was appropriate utility spread throughout, and the low tiers occupied the right niche.
Right.
Um, the Beartics, this was your favorite team, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Torrenti, Jirachi, Como, Volcanion. Yeah, I think I felt like the low tiers were pretty well integrated into this one too.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And then I
and
have Sharpedo kind of low in mine, and you have it as your third.
oh yeah, what did I like about the Sharpedos?
I know you really
Um,
liked the core though, the Corviknight, Sylveon, and Incineroar
yeah, my
combo.
thing, yeah, my thinking is that if there are a lot of these OU like teams, I think that not everyone has a defensive core that can hold up to that, but I think that Corviknight,
Mm.
Sylveon, and Incineroar actually can.
Right.
And I think that it's okay to find offense in some of the mid tiers like Starmie and Venusaur.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe dip down to Sneasel every
Yeah.
once in a while.
Where mid tier defense might not be able to handle the top tier offense.
Right. Right.
Cool.
So that's what I felt about the Sharpedos. Let me, I guess, quickly, I think there are three other teams. I just put myself in the second tier. I like my team. I'm
Yeah.
excited about it.
You're
I think
allowed to
there's
like
good
your team.
synergy. Yeah. Um, Venusaurs, I like this team a lot too. Yeah, this team, I think, has there's a lot of utility Pokemon that are
Right.
fun, especially and there's some really important, or not important, but just like helpful synergy, like you pointed out with the Alolan Raichu,
Right.
especially. So some really good value in the low tiers. Um, yeah, and I think Coco, like you mentioned, Coco with screens is really effective for Kyurem.
Right.
So um, yeah, that's why I had Sean's up there. Chris's had the two Beast boosters, um, what's that? That's the Galar United.
Yeah.
Had the two Beast boosters, Zygarde, which we know he can use well. I think he maybe even had Tapu Fini that season too. Um, I think the low tiers are well integrated here as well.
Cool.
Is there one more? Huston Haxorus. Let's see. Um, I liked the entry hazards. I think they're going to be good for Urshifu and for Thundurus. Um, and yeah, I think I like the offense in lower tiers, the
Right.
Goodra, Resurrect, Salazzle.
Right.
So
Cool.
anyway, that's the quick rundown, I guess.
Um, I'll just go over mine real quick in the sense. So my tiers aren't ordered, except my favorite team of each of the tiers is on the far left. It doesn't necessarily think I mean they're the best ones. They're just the ones I find most interesting. The ones that I would want to play with. And so if you look at my top tier, it is Beartics, Venusaurs, Punxsutawny Pachirisu, and Braviarys. What I'm scared about is that two of those, Braviarys and the Beartics, have like won or and made it into playoffs every single time. So two of what I think are our best coaches have our top five overall drafts. And if you draft well, it makes it easier to win. And if you're a good coach, it makes you easier to win. So I'm kind of like on the lookout for those two coaches, especially to have really good seasons. Maybe Nick is going to get a second a second championship in his second time playing in the season. We'll find out. And yeah, I think the Beartics team in general. I think I said was my favorite one overall. I really do think that the Jirachi Como Weezing Torn can be run every single week and is gonna do incredible every time. So some of those other times were like, oh, maybe they're pigeonholed into certain things. No. This is really good. And for the B tier, these are the ones that I think were just out of. I originally was going to do a top 5, but I think that the ones that I listed are just a tier above these ones. And I really like the Irish Married ones going into this one, just because I think part of it is just my bias towards both Clefable and Garchomp. They're both versatile enough that you can build whatever team you want around both of those. And for the C tier, out of these ones, I picked mine because I'm excited to use them. I'm excited for my team. I don't think anyone here has expressed regret in their team, nor do I think anybody should regret the draft that they have. So yeah, I'm excited about my team. I want to see. It's funny because the last 2 people that have drafted Rillaboom, I think, were the Braviarys and the Seaville Weaviles. And both coaches expressed that they were kind of like disinterested in Rillaboom. Maybe it was over tiered. Maybe it shouldn't be in the higher tiers. I'm kind of on the opposite end where I'm like, I think that this Pokemon's going to be boring to build with. Maybe I'm going to bring the same set every week, but I still want to bring it. I still think it's going to be fun. So I'm excited for Rillaboom. And I've had Thwacky the past couple seasons, and so I'm excited for Dad Thwacky. And then in the lower tiers, really, I just think that these have a few things that just need some patchwork. They could really benefit from a couple trades. It doesn't mean that they should throw out their entire draft, but that they're, hopefully you noticed in what we were saying, that there are some what I would consider stronger holes that can be patched. So going through the list, Dubwool I think is slow. I think Magnezone is fine, but maybe a switch to Magneton to get that steel trapping capability, and then getting a faster offensive Pokemon in like the 120 point range, 140 point range, I think would really help the team. I think for the Dunsparce, having something that could deal with possible fairies could be nice, but more importantly, I think just getting some more fast offense. Cinderace isn't available, but think something like that, something that complements your Urshifu, but is like also faster than Urshifu, I think would be a really good addition. And then with the Weaviles, I mean, you heard what we said just about the overlap. Like I said, I do think this is the ones on the far left are the ones I'm more interested in the tier that they're in, and I think that Andy is going to, like, kind of, Nick last season brought some really fun Mew sets, and I think Andy is going to continue in that tradition and bring some really fun Mew sets on his Rain squad. So, anywho, I'm gonna switch it back to a regular mode if you're okay. If you're decent, Adam, I'll put your webcam back up.
Yeah. Yes, I am in fact decent.
Nice. So, almost fell. Thank you guys for watching. And if you have any questions, we should talk about it in the Discord. Don't leave comments on YouTube. It doesn't matter there.
Yeah.
We'll have better discussion in the Discord, and yeah, I'll try to get this up tonight and timestamp it for everyone. Maybe tomorrow. We'll see.
Yeah, and, as always, if you disagree with our assessment, feel free to argue your point. But of course, this is the time to prove us wrong. So
yeah. I mean, even you can see just in our how much. I mean, we talk so much during the draft and after the draft about what we think is good and not good. And oftentimes we have very, very similar analysis. I think last season was like nearly mirror, like what we thought on each team from each other. And this one we have quite a few differences, like even just the weather differences, the Sharpedo difference. And so, yeah, and I think Colin and Chris also posted their analysis, and those are wildly different than both of ours and from each other. So feel free to put in your own input. And I think it'll be really fun to review what other people are thinking, and hopefully it's been helpful for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see you in a couple months, I'm sure, well, of course, tomorrow in the Discord, but in a couple months with another video,
Yep.
surely. So, thanks for listening and watching.
Adam, do you want to sign us out, or do we want to wait 15 minutes and 30 seconds and hit an exact
So we,
4-hour video? I'm kidding.
oh, yeah. Yeah. Guys, normally we spend like 2 to 4 hours prepping before we start recording.
Right.
And this time
We spend more time prepping than we do clicking record.
yep. Sometimes we'll almost like the prep just turns into like, wow, we should have just recorded that. So this time we just recorded it.
Yeah.
But turns out we just talked for a long time about every
Yeah.
team. So, and
You
it's a
just
lot of
got
teams.
you just got an inside look at what Adam and I only talk about strictly. We only talk about Pokemon ever, and we just recorded a conversation that we normally have.
Yeah,
Very
this is,
normal.
yep. Okay. I don't know. I feel like I should do some like, and